this public meeting. I'm calling this public meeting to order at 6 p.m. in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on September 6, 2023, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's public hearings will be followed by our regular meeting. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConComHearing. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Christopher Edwards with the Environment Department.
Great, thank you. Now I'll call roll of the commissioners who are present. Commissioner Sullivan?
John Sullivan.
Commissioner Long?
Nick Long.
Commissioner Conan? He might be a few minutes late. Okay. Commissioner Richmond?
Alice Richmond.
Okay, and I'm here. So, okay, first item on the agenda tonight is a notice of intent for DEP file number 0061959 and Boston file number 2023-049 from Collins Engineers, Inc. on behalf of Boston Planning and Development Agency for the proposed removal of a concrete deck at the existing pile-supported wharf at the south and east jetty, installation of a soldier pile bulkhead landward of the existing steel sheet pile bulkhead at the south jetty, and removal of the on-site stockpiled soil located at 3 Dolphin Way in South Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, designated port areas, land under ocean, coastal bank, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. This has been continued from the August 16th, 2023 hearing. The only outstanding item was that prevented us from closing the meeting and issuing the order of conditions was the lack of a DEP file number, which we now have. So with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions for this project.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Has Commissioner Conan joined us yet? Nope. Okay. Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061820 and Boston file number 2021-045 from Norwood Engineering on behalf of CAD Builders LLC for the proposed construction of a single-family home and associated landscaping located at 27 Willette Street in West Roxbury. Resource areas: 100-foot buffer to bordering vegetated wetland, 100-foot buffer to isolated vegetated wetland, 100-foot buffer to inland bank. This has been continued from the May 4th, 2022 hearing. I have to recuse myself from this matter in the following hearing for the RDA from Norwood Engineering regarding 34 and 36 Willette Street in West Roxbury, because my firm represents, I believe it's CAD Builders. Yeah, CAD Builders. So with that, I would entertain a motion to appoint Commissioner Richmond as the chair for these two hearings.
So moved.
We have a second.
A second.
Second. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Oops. What happened?
Chair Parker, sorry. You're muted. I apologize. That was my fault. And Commissioner Conan just joined us.
Okay. Great. So I got votes from Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Long. Excuse me, Commissioner Conan, you're with us?
I am.
Okay, so let the record reflect that you're in attendance. We're just taking the roll to appoint Commissioner Richmond acting chair for the next two hearings. I've recused myself, and the vote is coming to you.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Who is here on behalf of the applicant?
Matthew Smith, Norwood Engineering Company.
Okay, are you set to go, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, please do. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming back. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, my name is Matt Smith. I'm an engineer with Norwood Engineering Company. I'm here with Alexander Kraplin from my firm, and John Rockwood, the environmental engineer, is also with us. We also have Katya, the landscape architect, on board. We're here to ask you to approve a notice of intent for a single residence house. We were here a very long time ago, and at that time it was determined that the land adjacent to us had some work that had been done that should not have been done. And so well over a year, we've been working with the commission to have restoration work done in that area, and it was led by John Rockwood. Since then, the commission has approved the restoration work. The grading has been done. All of the area has been seeded and planted. John has done the inspections and made the reports on the planting, and things are progressing well. Rightly so, you asked us not to come forward with the notice of intent application until that matter was taken care of. It has been taken care of, so we're back here tonight. And we're asking you to approve a single residence house in the buffer zone, with work in the buffer zone at 27 Willette Street, also known as Lot P. We're in the 100-foot buffer to the BVW, 100-foot buffer to an isolated wetland, and a 100-foot buffer to a bank. We are not doing any work within the 25-foot riverfront or within the 25-foot waterfront. We are out of both of those two areas. I'd like to do a brief description of the project and then ask Katya to talk about her landscape plan and present her landscape plan. Alex, if you could put the existing conditions plan up, or if whoever is sharing, great. So the lot is in, I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit on Lot P, Alex, but Lot P is up on the upper left-hand corner. Just above Lot P, near the north arrow, is a wetland A, which is an isolated wetland with an intermittent stream. To the right of Lot P is wetland B with an bordering vegetated wetland B with an intermittent stream. And we've shown the buffers to both of those wetland resources areas. So we have wetland B behind the lot and wetland A behind the lot and wetland B to the right of the lot. And Alex, if you could please go to the site plan on the next, great. So here we have a proposed single family dwelling. It's on Lot P. You can see wetland A behind there. We've been very careful to show that we're not having any work in the 25-foot riverfront or waterfront. We actually shaped the deck so we would be out of those areas. On the right-hand side, you can see that we're out of the 25-foot waterfront on Lot Q. And one of the things that we did when we designed this plan, as according to the regulations, we're infiltrating 1 inch of the impervious area. We're using Cultec recharge chambers and a 2x2 stone trench. The recharge chambers will recharge the roof. The stone trench will recharge the water from the driveway. We've proposed erosion control around the entire project on both sides and in the back. This will have a 12-inch compost sock and a silk in a siltation fence and a compost sock. And so it's a compact site, but we've able to move everything forward and outside of the buffer zones. I did get word that there was an issue where there was some trash or some debris that was in the intermittent stream in Wetland A. We certainly don't want that to happen. We'll have it cleaned up right away. And one suggestion I had was that we could have a condition of the permit that that area is inspected and cleaned up periodically. If we could see the landscape plan, and I see that Katya is in the meeting. If she could do a presentation on the landscape plan, and I think it would make sense for us to wrap up our presentation relatively quickly and open up to questions. Alex, do you have the landscape plan available? Did we make it into the presentation? There we go. And Katya, are you?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm here. I wasn't actually aware this was going to be presented tonight. I'm actually on for the next
Oh, okay.
project, but I'm happy to speak to this. It's totally
I
fine.
didn't, I'll be honest, I didn't know you were here. I saw you were here, and so I was afraid
It's
that I
fine.
was gonna go on
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's
ignore
great.
you. So if
Yeah,
you
thank
could
you.
just say something briefly, that would be great, and
Yeah,
it would be
absolutely.
great to open up.
So
to
you can see here our planting plan. I'm afraid this particular image looks like it's very low resolution, but you can see that the entire right-hand third portion of the property, as shown on this plan, rotated, as opposed to the civil engineer's plans. So on the right-hand third is not being touched. It's very densely vegetated with trees, grasses. It's very thick and full. You can't get through it or down there, and it's not going to be touched. And we're proposing very simple palette. It's all native plants. I'm not remembering exactly. I think that's a red maple in the upper left-hand corner. I don't remember the others right now. Can I read this? Oh, it's a bald cypress in the bottom right, the evergreen tree. A very light touch, within the 25-foot waterfront, or no touch within the waterfront area. And outside of that, a very light touch, mulch plant beds and native plants. I think we have a row of arrowwood viburnum along the bottom edge, which should divide the properties, provide a little bit of buffer to the neighbors to the bottom of the page there. We do have a privacy fence proposed along the top of the page, which is the other side of the butters to the, I guess it's the northwest, but we stopped the fence short of that 25-foot waterfront area. So it's just a privacy between the house and the neighbors to the west there. Permeable pavers being used at the front walkway and simple asphalt right at the driveway. I think that's the quick synopsis.
Thanks, Katya. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Not at all.
And so at this time, I think we'd like to open it up to any questions that the commissioners may have.
Okay, thank you very much. And before we do that, I just, on behalf of us, I would like to thank you for the restoration work that was done. We've had a couple of conversations about that, and you did what you were asked to do, and we're grateful that you did. So thank you for doing that. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, staff want to give comments first, or do you want me to go?
I can get to staff. Elena, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
I don't. Thank you. My questions were addressed in the presentation.
Okay. Now, Commissioner Sullivan.
All right, just trying to be polite.
No, that's great.
Is the infiltration systems and all that, those were previously approved by Boston Water Sewer?
Yes, sir, they were.
And is there any changes in that plan? Because every year you have to resubmit them. It must be at least a year old.
No changes to the infiltration systems that we proposed before. I'll verify what we have approved by Boston Water and Sewer. I believe what we present tonight has been approved by Boston Water and Sewer, but there were a couple of versions of this. I believe it's been done, but let me verify that with you, Mr. Sullivan, and if we need to send you a revised plan, we will.
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out. When you have something like this and people buy it, do they realize that they are within 25-foot riverfront? Is that on I'm sure it's on the registry of deeds and all that, but do you guys attempt to explain to them what they can and can't do on that property in the future?
Generally, yes, they generally are given a copy of the order of conditions and are made known that there was an order of conditions on the site. And it's generally explained to them when they look at the design. When you'll see that the deck is kind of a little bit of an unusual shape, and the reason is because of the conservation restriction. So it's a matter of the order of conditions generally kicks up in the title search, even if it is given a certificate of compliance, it still shows up in the title, and then any information that the seller and the broker would tell the buyer.
All right, that's all I had for questions.
Okay, Commissioner, next Commissioner.
I guess that would be me, Commissioner Long.
Yes, sorry, Commissioner Long.
That's okay. The only question I have for you now, Matt, is what are the conditions like that you're planting into? Or in other words, what are the existing conditions in the planting area for like the viburnum, for example?
Well, the existing in the planting area right now, it's kind of a gravel lot. It had been worked in the past, and that was one of the reasons why we had to do the restoration in the area, and it's certainly not something that we're proud of. It certainly wasn't something directed by me, but it did happen. But the existing conditions now in the area outside of the buffer is it was a gravel area, but it's overgrown by whatever vegetation has taken over.
Yeah. So the reason I was asking was, whether there are any weeds or established plants, invasive plants, I'm thinking, in the area you're planting into, but it sounds like it's mostly gravel. Is that right? You were talking about weeds outside of the buffer?
Yes, outside of the buffer, it's gravel and whatever grasses and weeds that have grown in. They'll be shaved off anyway. We'll put the erosion control first, but there has to be some earthwork there, so that level of whatever vegetation is there will be stripped off, and then they'll come back in later with loam and seed.
Wonderful. Okay. I liked Commissioner Sullivan's question about making the homeowners aware of being within the waterfront or being close to the waterfront area. That kind of answered one of my questions. So that really wraps it up for me. Thank you.
You're done? Commissioner Long? Are you finished?
All done.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennan?
Thank you, Chair Richmond. Hello. So I just couldn't tell if there's any work being done within the 25-foot riverfront buffer.
No, none. None in the riverfront, none in the waterfront. We have a proposed erosion control silt fence and compost sock at those buffers, and they will be installed in the first phase of the project. So nothing is done within those two buffers.
Thank you. So on the weeds question, you didn't see any Japanese knotweed in that area?
Are you asking inside the buffer or outside of the buffer? Within the work area or in the
Within the work area.
Within the work area? I'm not really familiar with that. I have to be honest with you. I don't think I see Katya saying she doesn't remember seeing that. I don't. Is the concern that there may be an invasive species that could get into the wetlands, or what is the concern?
That is the concern. If it's not handled properly, and it's now, Commissioner Long can confirm this, but I'm just seeing that all over the place, and not just in our city either. So
Sure.
something to be wary of.
Okay, and I do have a response that in connection with the restoration work that this commission approved, John Rockwood, the environmental scientist, is doing periodic inspections of that area, not only to look at what has been planted and restored, but also what's going on within the wetland and the buffers to the wetland. So if he did see some issues within that buffer, that would come up in his report because he is required to report back to you.
I can respond to that. There is a little bit of knotweed in the restoration area. It's small patches within the restoration area, and we're dealing with those small patches. And I'm gonna go out there in the next couple, 3 weeks in order to do the fall inspection, and I'll have a better idea of what's out there relative to knotweed. There were a few small patches, very small, very new patches, so those are very treatable. There are larger patches of knotweeds on the slope and off property to the east. So there is knotweed out in that general area of the city.
No, I'm glad to hear that your assessment is that it's treatable. So hopefully in the report that the staff sees, we see that confirmation as well, but I am glad to hear that. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you very much. You may have answered my question. I'm sorry. Did you want to add something? I'm not sure. Okay, I think you may have answered my question. I had a conversation with Ann Herbst, who isn't able to be here tonight, Commissioner Herbst, and we were concerned about the intermittent stream and what the material that was in it that I think you said was going to be removed, which is good news. And then what was going to happen in the future to ensure that that area remains clear, mostly because of a concern that if the debris was allowed to accumulate there and there were heavy rains or there was some kind of water event that it would flow downstream onto other people's property and be a real mess. So I take it from what you said at the beginning that A, that area is going to be cleaned, and B, you will agree to a part of the order of conditions that it is the landowner's responsibility in the future, and it will be monitored to keep that intermittent stream area clear. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, and as a condition of the permit, you can make that an ongoing condition that will just run with the land in the future. So it will stay on record at the Registry of Deeds, and even when you issue a certificate of compliance in the future, that ongoing condition will remain. And so it obligates the property owner to keep it clean. And what it also does, it gives you enforcement power to go in and say, if something has happened, you can take action to force the property owner to do what is required.
Can I comment on this for a second? The intermittent stream behind the property is actually on the abutting property. There's a small portion of the wetland that projects onto lot 27 or 27 Willett, but the intermittent stream is actually off-site. So it's actually owned by the house adjacent to this
but
lot.
the material that is there now is that the refuse of various sort that is on 27 Willett. Is that right?
I can't confirm that, but the stream itself is on the abutting property. There's a small portion of the wetland that's on 27 Willett. So the stream itself is off-site.
And there's no portion of the stream you think that's on 27 Willett?
No, it's shown on the site plan as completely off-site.
Okay, well, we seem to have different information. Elena, can you help out on this?
So I don't have any additional information on this. I mean, something that I'm happy to do is to follow up with this after the hearing to sort out what the case is.
Okay, because I think in terms of my question and what the issue was that was raised, the proponent or applicant's statement would be completely satisfactory. But on the other hand, if it's not an area, I mean, if I understood it correctly, whatever's there now is going to get cleaned up by 27 Willett by the applicant, and that's great. But going forward, it would seem that the responsibility to keep the area clean, if the intermittent stream is not on that property, then it probably is not appropriate to put it there. So I think we need to find out what the answer to that is.
If I may, if we could take a look at the site plan, if we could have Alex take this, put the engineered site plan up again. I
Yeah,
could show you where the stream is, and John is right, the actual stream is on the McElroy property. Certainly, anything that's within the limits of Lot P, we'd be happy to have the condition that it can be cleaned up. I have not been out there, and I have not seen exactly where the debris is. I mean, I will say, when you're out there, the stream is a little bit difficult. Well, the flags are out there, but it's a very, as a civil engineer, it's a very small stream, so it's a little bit difficult to find out exactly where you're standing. But if we could bring that plan
sorry.
back up.
Yeah, Matt,
Mhm.
sorry, Christopher Edwards, our conservation fellow, actually is the one who's in charge of the PowerPoint. So I think if he's able to scroll back, if you could just let him know where he should pause, that would be
Okay,
helpful.
Yep.
Thank
Keep
you.
going back. Yep. Great, thanks. Back. Next one, please. Next one. Okay, let's take, yep, I'm sorry, we had it. Now let's
One
go
more.
forward one, please. It's a better blow up. Forward one, I think. Yeah,
There it
that's
is.
great.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So if, as we see on the left side, there's the wording that says wetland A, okay? And then just below that wetland A is a green line, and that is the intermittent stream, which is on the land of, it looks like McElroy. And there's another green line that is a 25-foot buffer, then another green line beyond that, that's the other 25-foot buffer. So you can see that the entire, the waterfront, 25-foot waterfront is on Lot P, and a little bit of the 25-foot riverfront is on Lot P. So again, I'm not sure exactly where that debris is. We'd be happy to have our people go in and just clean up the debris regardless. But in the future, that condition would be applicable to Lot P, because, you know, we can only control our land. And then anything beyond that would be the responsibility of the.
So what you're saying is that it would be amenable to you to have that part of the order of conditions and run with the land. And if the commission needs to do something else with respect to some other land, that's what we'll do. But you
Yes.
have agreed with respect to your land that will happen.
We'll do it for our land, and we'll go out there, and I mean, we're happy to go out there and pick up any debris, even if it is on somebody else, you know, if it's a few feet onto somebody else's land, we'd be happy to.
Okay, well, I think that's a great solution, and I thank you for that. Are there any other questions from the commission? And Elena, do we need to ask for public comment on this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, is there anything in the chat or anything that indicating that somebody else would like to speak?
I don't see anything in the chat, but if folks are on the call and would like to provide public comment, raising your hand would be the best option here.
Okay. Do you see any hand raised?
Let's see, I'm not seeing any raised hands here.
Okay, all right, then I think we're ready to close the hearing. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Cannon,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond votes aye. That's 4-0. Okay, we're gonna go, and thank you very much to the proponents. Thank you for a good presentation and for the work you've done on that property. It is good work. Thank you. What we're going to do now is do the RDAs, because it's the same issue with respect to the chair, so we thought it would make sense to have all of this done at the same time, so we don't have to keep recusing and coming back in. So we're gonna take the RDAs that are on. The first one, is there somebody here for the first RDA? Which is Starling Street 34 and 36 Willett in South Boston. 2 Starling Street, 34 and 36 Willett, South Boston.
We're, again, Matt Smith, Norwood Engineering. I think it should say West Roxbury. We're not South Boston.
Okay, you're exactly
Apologies for
right.
that, yes.
I'm sorry, that is
Excellent.
West Roxbury. I
Okay,
apologize. I
yeah,
knew
I'm
that.
sorry. No, that threw me a little bit. So
right.
Matt Smith, Norwood Engineering, we, the same team is here to present that.
Okay, I apologize. I knew it was in West Roxbury and I just
No,
read what
no,
was
it threw me a
Okay.
little bit. Okay. Okay. So again, my name is Matt Smith. I'm here. I'm an engineer with Norwood Engineering Company. I'm also here with John Rockwood and Alex Graplin for the project. We're requesting an RDA. We want to ask the commission to issue a negative RDA, meaning that a order of conditions is not required. It's in the same neighborhood as Lot P that we just discussed, but these lots that we're going to show you are across the street from the wetland. So we have the same wetland that we talked about with the buffers and the 2 25-foot buffers on the other side of the street, but a little bit of the 100-foot buffer does go into each of these 3 lots. They've been given the same design criteria as the lot that we just discussed. It recharges the 1 inch of stormwater. It has erosion control, but we feel that it would be appropriate to not have a order and conditions issued for these lots because they're separated by some lots that actually will not be developed, and then a street, and then we have a little bit of the buffer zone. So if the person who's in charge of the PowerPoint, if they could put that up, I can show the commission what we're presenting, and then open it up to questions. So there's again, here's our existing conditions plan, and at the bottom of the plan, there's lots T, V, and W. T, V, and W. And that's what we want to discuss tonight. And at the top of the plan, you can see the wetland B that we discussed in the last hearing and the buffer zones to that. And interestingly, the lots across the street, lots R and S, at this point in time are, the plan is to not develop them because of the restrictions of the buffer zone. We may come back for lot Q, we would need a variance. But at this point in time, it looks like there won't be any houses on lot R and S. If anything changed in the future, we would have to come back to the commission, but I don't see that being the plan. So these lots T, V, and W, they're separated by Willett Street, which has been approved and has all of the required infiltration and treatment. There's lot R and S across the street, which is part of the restoration work that John has been leading, that has been regraded and replanted. And then we have the wetland B and the wetland and the intermittent stream. So if you look at lots T, V, and W, there's a blue line, and that shows the edge of the 100-foot buffer zone. So there's only a little bit of the 100-foot buffer zone in lot T, V, and W. If we could please see the next slide. We're going to see, so that's lot T, the same level of detail that we had for the other plan, the same design criteria, the infiltration of the 1 inch of roof. Let's take a look at the next slide, please. I believe we'll see let's go one more. Those are the details that we submitted with the other ones. If we can see the next slide, please. There we go. Okay, and that looks, all right, where am I here? Okay, yeah, there's T, And then as we go down the page, we're kind of looking sideways, V and lot W. So the houses are outside of the buffer. We're proposing some retaining walls and a little bit of the driveway, which will be recharged into the ground in the buffer. And really because the chance of impact to the wetlands is very minor, because any runoff from this street, from these lots, which are very minimal, will go into the street, which has the drainage improvements. And then across the street is vacant lots, and then we get to the buffers. So our question to the commission is to issue a negative determination of applicability, meaning that the notice of intent would not be applicable to this, and allow the project to go forward without a notice of intent and order of conditions. At this point in time, I'd like to open it up to any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Elena, do you have anything you want to add to this?
So for this one, the only note that I had was that we've received an email that's in the it's in the folder for the commission's review. But other than that, I didn't have any additional notes.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, Elena, when we issue RDAs, we also have them with certain conditions to protect the wetland while they're doing construction itself.
Yes, so the commission, if the commission chooses to vote on this RDA and wants to also include conditions, those conditions should be discussed before the hearing is closed.
Okay, that's all I had. This question.
So Commissioner Sullivan, can I just ask, you think that you would like to make sure that there is part of the order of conditions that even during construction, that there be some sort of a barrier to protect that area?
Well, if we give a negative determination, I'm just suggesting that we make sure this is construction, this is dirt, muck, concrete. And even though that comes a little bit onto the land, that we make sure that out in the street where, there's catch basins, et cetera, that those are all protected.
Okay, all right, and you've got that, Elena, if we do issue a negative determination of applicability, okay?
Correct. If the motion is for a negative determination of applicability, the commission can choose to add standard erosion controls, and we have a standard format for that.
Okay, and I think that's what Commissioner Sullivan has just requested, if there is a negative determination of applicability. Okay,
Perfect.
all right. Commissioner Long.
Thank you. So Matt, another question for you. I know it's a sliver of buffer zone. Could you tell us again exactly what's happening in the buffer zone?
Yes, well, they'll be building some retaining walls, some lawn, and the beginning of the driveway before the driveway goes beyond the into the lot. But I also want to let the commissioners know that Willett Street has been constructed. So these are going to be lots that are going to be built on a street that has it's all been constructed. The sidewalks are in, the curbing is in, all of the it's not like an open construction site. Willett Street has been done. But to answer your questions, what will happen in the buffer zone are some retaining walls, lawn, and driveway.
And during the construction period, can you think of a feasible area where you could have erosion controls, such as straw bottles, or whatever the commission stipulates?
Can I get back to that one? The site plans actually show erosion control barriers on all the lots already. And
Thank you, John.
And Willett Street already has drop inlet protections in it for the construction that's going on already on Starling outside of jurisdiction. So the catch basins in Willett Street are already protected with drop inlets with inlet protection, and the site plans actually show an erosion control barrier going through the buffer zone along the frontage.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwood. I missed that. That really wraps up my questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Commissioner Cannon.
Thank you, Chair Richmond. So what was the reference to the undeveloped parcels? I don't think I followed that unless I heard it incorrectly.
Sure, we can put it back up on the screen, but across the street from these lots, there are two lots, lots R and S, which originally the applicant had hoped to build houses, but since the ordinance has been passed where the with the 225-foot buffer zones, the constructability of the lot has diminished, and at this point in time, it does not look like those two lots would be developable for houses. Now, that's where we stand now. That's what we're looking at. I really don't see that we could get a variance for a house small enough to fit on those lots. But if we do, we would have to go back to them. But I just want to be careful to say that I'm not giving a guarantee that nothing will ever be built there, but at right now, that does not seem feasible for a house to be built there.
Economically feasible.
Well, dimensionally feasible, feasible.
I see.
And I'm being a little bit hesitant because it's one of those things you never say never, and
Sure.
some very, very strange set of circumstances, something ever got built there. I don't want to be on record saying that it could never happen, but the likelihood is very, very low.
Understood. Thank you. Appreciate that. Is excuse me, is the buffer, the sliver of the buffer that's in these lots, is it sloping in any way or is it flat? Excuse me.
It's the land will have to be, it's kind of flat. Well, the land is sloped right now, but at the street line, we propose to build some retaining walls that would go straight up. So if you're walking along the roadway and the lots are on the right now it's some sloped land. And what we would do is build a retaining wall, so there'd be the face of the retaining wall on the right as you go along to kind of step the site up a little bit, so we don't have a real steep slope in the front yard.
I see. The retaining wall itself would be in the buffer though, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay. You mentioned you're planning to do like a meadow or a lawn and a driveway in that space.
Yes, so it would be it's a house lot, so it's on Willett Street. So each of the houses would have a driveway, and then either where there's not a driveway, there'd be a retaining wall, and then at the top of the retaining wall would be lawn. So and since just a little bit of the buffer zone is within the lots, that's what would be occurring within the buffer zone. Retaining wall, the lawn for the houses, and the beginning of the driveway would be in the buffer zone, and the driveway would continue out of the buffer zone to the house, which is outside of the buffer zone.
I understand. So the beginning of the driveway in the buffer zone, and maybe, beyond that, are you considering permeable driveway or non-permeable?
We didn't propose permeable driveway, but we do recharge all of the rainwater by a different method, basically by having the rechargers that recharge it. So we will achieve the 1 inch of infiltration, but we're not proposing permeable pavement.
May I
Pervious
ask,
pavement, I should say.
would you be open to doing permeable?
I am not a big fan of that for a couple of reasons. First of all, for small projects, it's hard to get the material. You can get permeable pavement in larger bulk, but for small bulk, it's very difficult to get. I think the slope of the driveway is a little bit steeper than I'd like to see for pervious pavers. Pervious pavers work really well on very flat slopes, like 1-2% slopes.
Mhm.
I know that we can achieve, and we have achieved, this infiltration by the Coltex. And it's a very interesting discussion, and it is debatable, but I have some concern about the amount of maintenance that pervious pavers need. Typically, they're supposed to be vacuumed rather than swept. And if you have that for, say, a commercial project where there's a commercial property manager in charge, you have better control over how that pavement is going to be treated. When you sell it to a homeowner, they're not gonna vacuum it. So, so really, it's a really great discussion. I am a big fan of pervious pavement in certain instances, but that was not our recommendation for this project.
Because it's too small a space.
It's a small space. You'd have to get a very small, volume of it, and also just the applicability. A little bit steeper than I'd like to see. These driveways kind of come down hill. I like pervious pavement on flat areas. I'm concerned about maintenance of them. You know, if people throw sand and salt on them and don't
Sure.
vacuum it, they can clog up.
So you're concerned that effectively it may not be permeable because of the lack of maintenance.
Exactly. That's right. It becomes pervious, and then the water just flows off of it.
Okay. So what percentage of the lot is in the buffer?
Oh, I think it would be about 10% maybe. It depends on it depends on which one, but in general, less than 10%.
It's a very small percentage, actually. It's a very thin sliver of the lot. If you put the plan back up, you can see it visually,
Yeah.
how small a percentage of the lot it actually is.
Yeah, we should
I
look.
see Commissioner Long's hand up.
It's 6%.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the public, Elena?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and if folks could raise their hand if they wanted to provide comment, now would be a great time. I'm not seeing any hands raised either.
Okay, so I think we are probably ready to vote on this. Does somebody want to make a motion? Okay, I'll make a motion that we deny the I'm just not sure which way it goes, Elena. Is it we deny go ahead, Elena.
We request a negative determination of
That's
applicability.
what I
which
was going to
means
do.
it's not applicable.
Right,
So
I was going
it
to
would
make a
make-
motion for a negative determination of applicability, but you know, when you hear the word negative, you say,
Yes,
is that the right way to
Yes.
do? Anyway,
Yes.
that's correct.
yeah.
You are
yeah,
absolutely right.
On
And-
this very rare occasion, we want a negative vote on this.
A negative, so my motion is for a negative determination of applicability on all three parcels that are before the commission tonight.
And Chair
Is there-
Richmond, I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt. And if we wanted to add any standard conditions to that, I would include, if the commission wanted to include those in the motion.
Okay, then I'm open for any friendly amendment and a second from some other commissioner.
Yes, so the erosion controls they included in their submittals looks great. And I would second your motion.
Okay, and do we need any other erosion controls, Commissioner Sullivan, or are those standard ones going to address the issues you were concerned about?
The standard ones will take care of it.
Okay,
Yeah,
All
one
right.
more comment. You're actually voting to issue a negative determination 3. There's different numbers for the negative determinations, and the one for work in the buffer zone that doesn't affect the resource area is a negative determination 3. It's the box that gets checked off on the form.
okay, all right. Is that, Elena, are you comfortable with that, or do we need to? just-
That's fine. Yeah, we'll check the box based on the request that was made by the applicant.
Okay, I'm, all right, so just so we're all on the same page on this, we are making a negative determination of applicability for all 3 parcels that were, it's to Starling and whatever it was on Willett Street. I'm sorry, I don't have it right up in front of me. And we are going to do it with respect to the item 3 on the form that was submitted by the applicant. Is that now correct?
Yep.
Yes? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Kennan?
Aye.
I vote aye. That's 4-0. Guys, thank you very, very much for a very interesting and complete presentation. Good luck with your project. And I am delighted that we can now ask our chair to come back. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Richmond. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010 from DeCoulis and Company LLC on behalf of Stefco Holdings Company for the proposed demolition of an existing structure and construction of 8 housing structures located at 90 Allendale Street in West Roxbury. Resource areas are 100-foot buffer to inland bank, waterfront area, riverfront area. This matter has been continued from the June 21st, 2023 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
James DeCoulos, Mr. Chairman, and with me this evening is applicant Stephanos Estratudakis, owner Linda Estratudakis, environmental scientist John Rockwood, landscape architect Katia Podziadlo, and attorney John Pulgini.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. You certainly have an all-star team lined up for us, so we appreciate all the work you've been doing.
Well, likewise, Mr. Chairman, we've stolen some free agents from some other projects, being John Rockwood and Katia. So we're looking to assemble the best team we can with the money that our team owner has available. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we want to thank you for allowing us to continue our hearings and work to revise this project. It was originally filed in January of 21, and we believe that we have arrived at a respectful and sensitive design that minimizes impacts to wetland resources and provides 8 additional housing units for the city. Chris, if you could move to the second slide. So this slide shows an aerial image from the Mass DOT pictometry viewer. Its purpose is just simply to provide some context for where the project is located and its surroundings. Next slide. This slide shows the resource area boundaries under both local and state rules with the existing house that's proposed for demolition. These buffer zones are not protected under the Wetlands Protection Act or DEP's regulations. The buffer zones I'm referring to are the riverfront area and the waterfront area. There is a 100-foot buffer from a Mass DEP regulated bank, and that's shown in cyan 100 feet from the edge of that bank. Most times of the year, there's no water that flows through this intermittent stream. The commission has not adopted any performance standards for work in these local protected buffer areas, and we are not proposing any buildings or structures in these areas. Next slide. This slide just simply summarizes our design revisions and efforts we've made after listening to the commission and the BPDA. I'm not going to read it, but just to let you know, as I expressed to Elena in an email yesterday, we've initiated the pre-file process with BPDA. We've had 2 meetings and a 3rd meeting is scheduled. These meetings have been very productive and have led to, as the first bullet shows, some meaningful changes that have reduced footprints and reduced impervious areas for the project. Our BPDA project manager is Scott Greenall. Next slide. This slide here shows how a majority of the 2 acres of land is being preserved through a combination of setbacks from the intermittent stream and by deed restriction. Attorney Chip Nyland has explained the restriction in a letter dated August 28th, and we provided that letter in Exhibit A of our latest submission. He also prepared a draft restriction that was included as Exhibit B. Next slide. This slide shows the overall project, the 8 proposed units with the proposed driveway, and their relationship to both local and state resource area boundaries. We have, as we said, as the earlier slide noted, we've further moved units 5 and 6 away from the intermittent stream, and we've further minimized temporary disturbance in the waterfront area as a result of recent efforts since our last hearing in June and last submission. Next slide. This slide shows what the existing conditions are like. It's actually flipped 180 degrees. North is down the page rather than up, but you get to see how the water of the intermittent stream flows onto our property with that concrete head wall through a 21-inch reinforced concrete pipe. And for most of the year, as you can see in these photos that were taken 3 years ago, the stream is dry. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you personally observed that during your site visit in 20 or 21. I think it was 21. Next slide. This slide here shows how those existing manicured areas that you saw previously are going to be transformed, and they'll be enhanced with an aggressive seeding and planting plan. And I'd like to have John Rockwood talk a little bit about the existing conditions and control of invasive species. John?
John Rockwood from Ecotech. With regard to the existing conditions on the site, the area in the waterfront area where we're proposing some grading up behind the buildings and for the stormwater system, those areas currently consist of maintained lawn areas. There's really no removal of existing shrubby or woody vegetation in those areas that are proposed to be graded. Throughout much of the other, through the stream channel and the riverfront area and most of the waterfront area, those areas are also largely maintained lawn with scattered shrubs and some scattered trees under existing conditions. So the area is periodically mowed through the course of the year and is largely a lawn area that resprouts with grasses, sedges, and other forbs periodically through the year. As part of this project, we're proposing to overseed the stream channel with natives. We're proposing to overseed the riverfront area and do some additional shrub and sapling plantings within the riverfront area to increase the diversity and get some additional plant materials in there. And with regard to the waterfront area, there'd be some overseeding and some native plantings. Would also propose erosion control blankets in the areas where grading is proposed behind the structures, and also on the area where the structural stormwater system intrudes slightly into the riverfront area. You know, the good thing about the stormwater system that's proposed is it will almost address the 500-year event. Basically, from a regulatory standpoint, you're required to address the 100-year storm event. This one will address almost the 500-year storm event for this property. That's a significant control of stormwater. With regard to other features on the site, there's an existing stone path and patio that exist under existing conditions within the lawn, within the waterfront area and the riverfront area. Those areas are proposed to be maintained. They exist and we're not proposing to take them out. With regard to invasives, the overseeding, the planting is going to provide some competition for the invasives, and the waterfront area is proposed to be mowed once a year. Now, whether that's mowed in the fall or whether it's mowed in the spring, that's subject to debate, but that can be conditioned for a spring mow if that's what is preferred. that's really what I have with regard to what we're proposing in this area in the back.
All right, thank you, John. Katya, do you have anything to add?
Nothing very specific to add on my end, but I believe your grading plan, if one of the previous slides shows the grading plan, I may have missed it, but did you point out that the grading has been reduced within the waterfront area to be, reduced in its impact as far as the area of disturbance? I know that was a question last time.
Yeah, and Chris, if you could go back two slides, maybe. You can actually see that grading plan that Katya just referred to right here, Chris. Thank you. What we've done is because units 5 and 6 have been pulled back, we were able to reduce the proposed grading and temporary disturbance in the waterfront area. And also the erosion control plan, I think the slide or two before shows what the limits of that work are. But as Katya said, there has been quite a significant reduction in disturbance in the waterfront area, and her proposed plantings under John's guidance provide a significant enhancement of that resource buffer zone.
I can actually quantify that. Basically, the area that we're grading as proposed in the waterfront area has been reduced to a total of 920 square feet, or 6.3% of the waterfront area on the site. That's a much smaller number than was proposed prior to that. We've actually taken had 3 general projects that we've sort of analyzed in my letter. The original filing, one that was filed earlier this year, and this one. And this one, we've greatly reduced the grading within the waterfront area to the maximum extent possible, and that's sort of what the ordinance points us to minimize anything there and to demonstrate a benefit in areas where it's sort of unavoidable to do the work. Again, we've reduced the width of the road, we've reduced the size of the structures, we've pulled the structures out of the waterfront area and actually a little bit further than that. And we've really adjusted the erosion controls and grading to the extent practicable to minimize this work in the waterfront area. And we've provided a comprehensive planting plan that includes seeding, perennial plantings, shrubs, saplings, all native materials. We've spent a lot of time and effort, listening to the commission and responding to the commission with what we felt met what they asked for.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, John. Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one last thing to wrap up our presentation here is just to address comments from Paul Sutton of Urban Wilds that we received this morning. We were disappointed that the comments came in late and that proper credit was not given to all the work that we've done, as John mentioned, in protecting the resources and open space and controlling invasive species. In John's letter, he talked about the full control of those invasives. If I could just quickly address Mr. Sutton's comments, shouldn't take more than one more minute, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, please do.
We agree that the waterfront is a buffer area, and we'd like to remind the commission that we're proposing to significantly enhance that waterfront area and riverfront area. And it's not a resource area per se. The deed restriction that Attorney Nyland provided and drafted allows for the right to extend the 30-year term, and it can easily be a condition of the order from the commission. As John said, we easily meet the stormwater standards for the property for both rate and volume, on-site and off-site. And the latest stormwater management plan that we included in the latest submission clearly demonstrates this achievement in tables 1 and 2, and also in exhibits B and C. We have an invasive planting management plan. The management and diversity of the plantings will exceed these under existing conditions. 2 more points to address Mr. Sutton's comments. The porches of units 6 and 7 are not in the waterfront area. There's no structures in the waterfront area, and it was just an incorrect allegation. And lastly, just wanted to point out the hydrologic connections of this intermittent stream, because they're not natural, pristine, or continuous. As Mr. Sutton mentioned, there is, the commission holds land upstream of 100 Allendale. But after it leaves that property, it flows through a 6-unit, highly impervious and a pre-existing housing development at 100 Allendale, empties onto our property through that 21-inch concrete culvert that you saw, flows onto the Springhouse Commission land. But then after that, it flows underneath Center Street, passes underneath the large Hebrew Rehab Center, empties into the Arnold Arboretum, and ultimately passes underneath the Forest Hills T Station, through the Franklin Park Golf Course, and discharges into Dorchester Bay. So it's a really complex and intermingled flow of this stream. Ultimately becomes perennial once it gets onto the BCC, the Commission Springhouse property just down gradient of us. But it's there are limited areas for us to control what we have coming onto our property, which is essentially that 21-inch culvert. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, that's our presentation for this evening. We'd like to close the hearing tonight, and we're looking for a decision from the commission. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, thank you. You've done a lot of work, there's no question. I just want to go through a little bit of the history here. I think you remember at the beginning of this process, it's probably 2 or 3 years ago now, you came to us and we were reluctant to put you on the agenda because you hadn't gone through the zoning relief process, knowing that that could be a process that's pretty involved that could change the project in scope. So in other words, if you went through the zoning process and it came out that you were able to obtain zoning relief for 4 units, you could construct those 4 units completely outside of our jurisdiction. So the thought was, let's not waste any time, and resources on a project that is highly conceptual at this point, or at that point. Through the process, you've made a lot of revisions. We've had a lot of back and forth. I think that, we're at a point now where conceptually, I think we've given you a lot of feedback. And if you went through the zoning process and you came back with, let's say, this approximate proposal, I think we'd be doing what we're doing now, which is tweaking things. So as far as closing the hearing tonight, I just want to remind you, how you get on the agenda and what we've been doing and working with you for the last few years. I think, and I'll let other commissioners speak for themselves. I think we would still like to see the outcome of the zoning process play out before we issue any sort of decision here. Partly because, and this is a segue into the next part of the history here. This is a super sensitive area, very important wetlands resource area and connections for the city. We've got the urban wilds abutting this property. You are asking to do some things in the waterfront area that as of yet we have not allowed. And so the idea of setting any sort of precedent on a project that frankly might not need it is not that appealing. And I won't speak for all of the commissioners, but it's not that appealing to at least a few commissioners based on comments we've had at other meetings. The other issue as far as the CR versus the development restriction, I appreciate Attorney Nyland's analysis. The issues that I asked about last time had more to do with, or the primary issue I asked about last time had more to do with the enforcement of the development restriction. And I think I cited a case that I was involved in several years ago where a similar sort of obligation or restriction on a condominium association, with the grantor being the developer, the sponsor of the property, the development. And when there was non-compliance, it was litigated, and it was the appeals court, I believe. Maybe it was the land court. But the outcome of the litigation was that third parties could not enforce any noncompliance for this development restriction. The only parties who could were parties who were had privity to the restriction itself, which was the developer and condominium unit owners. So a condominium unit owner could bring an enforcement action for noncompliance, but a third party couldn't. So that's a concern for us. Maybe the way to fix that, and I'd asked that question at the last hearing, maybe the way to fix that is a special condition, or maybe making the commission or some other governmental body a third-party beneficiary to this restriction. But that has not been analyzed yet, and we can certainly ask legal, but I would certainly like someone's input on that, whether it be Attorney Nyland or someone else. And then finally, Mr. Rockwood has done some great work here in his responses, and the whole team has. But because this is such a incredibly sensitive area, this is very complex, as you talked about, Mr. DeCoulis, there's a district-wide issue here as far as the health of the stream itself. I think we're really wrestling with, the impacts of the project in the buffer zone, the grading of the waterfront area, and how that's going to affect water quality for the stream, both on and off property. And haven't really gotten into, I know Mr. Rockwood broached the subject or addressed the subject of daylighting the stream in his letter. You mentioned it. I'm not sure we have any hard data at this point in which to make an informed decision on that. So what I'm thinking about, and I've noticed that you have submitted that you have started to pull your building permits, which will start the process for your zoning relief. So you have some time here. I'm thinking that it would be instructive for the commission if we were to invoke the under the ordinance, the ability to get a consultant's review of the project regarding several things, but maybe specifically and I think Commissioner Long has something to say about this as well. The amount of grading that's being done in the waterfront area, the health of the stream, and to look at the disagreement between our Urban Wilds program and Mr. Rockwood, as far as some of the points that were brought up in Paul's email today, which I'm looking at. So that's what I'm thinking at this point. If you want to respond to any of that before I go to Eleanor and the commissioners, feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your thoughts and points, these 3 points that you've raised. As far as the zoning issue goes, I just, there's no way that, we're in the process of obtaining permits, and we meet the requirements under both the Act and the local ordinance. So I don't think it's fair to be hamstringing us with a chicken and egg position here where, we're just sort of hamstrung as to how we can move. There's no reason why the commission can't move given where we are with the local permitting right now. Secondly, as far as the deed restriction goes, we're certainly willing to adopt a special condition. And as far as privity goes, we're more than willing to allow the commission or entity of the city to be a part of this agreement so that it is a direct party and not subject to third-party concerns that you mentioned that the appeals court addressed. Lastly, we've had this project now before the commission since January of 21. And here we are, 30 months later, and this is the first time we've heard about engaging a consultant. And I think it's a little discouraging, given all the efforts we've undertaken to make some significant improvements, and now at the last hour to be recommending this. I just don't think it's fair. So, thank you.
Okay,
May-
so I'll
may I
just,
say something? May I say
Uh,
something?
who's this?
This is Stefano. I'm sorry. Can you see me? I don't
Sure, of
know.
course. Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for all the input. Thank you for your patience in this project. Thank the team for all the great work they have done. I fully agree, Commissioner, that this is a very sensitive area. We are a very sensitive team. We did try to go for more units. As I mentioned before, we saw the emotions on the neighborhood, how they were totally against it. Frank, you were there. We recognize how sensitive this area is. This is why we felt that the commission with the most stringent and the most sensitive requirements and parameters is the Conservation Commission. We also felt that we don't need to have full permits. We need to just apply for our permits and to be in the process of talking to the other entities, and so have been advised from our architect and our attorneys and so forth. We have been doing that and have had some great meetings. No matter how many meetings we have, again, the most stringent and the most sensitive requirements, and we recognize that early on, come from the Conservation Commission and the Urban and Wild. And we felt we came not to push a project through, but we came for advice, sort of in a polite way, to just respect all those requirements. So I just want to point that out. This is why we sort of going around in circles. It feels like, or the way it sounds, it feels like. So we are doing all this with all the respect to the city and to the very sensitive area that we know we are. And I just wanted to mention that.
Sure, I appreciate that, and thank you. I just a quick response before we go to other commissioners. You know, I have to say that, again, we were pretty clear from the very beginning that under our ordinance, and I know what the wetlands regulations say, that we do have the ability to continue or not hear matters where we feel that we don't have sufficient information to make a ruling. And that in the past has included projects that were not quote unquote fully baked. And that's what we've been operating under. And I'm sorry if you feel like there's been some sort of last minute change here. I do think that conceptually you have something here that, again, if you get through zoning, that we'd be able to get our hands around. But that being said, as far as the disagreements, and I'm sorry, it's extra.
Stefano, you can call me Stefano.
That's okay.
I have
I'm
one name.
sorry.
It's just
I
Stefano.
shouldn't have thrown the
Don't worry, yeah.
page.
No,
but,
Stefano is fine, yeah.
To your point, that this is a very sensitive area and these are very stringent requirements, you know, with good reason. And I don't doubt your good faith. You've, again, as I said before, assembled a all-star team here. You have done a lot of work on this, but we still do have a disagreement between our Urban Wilds program and the development team here. And it feels like when we get to a point like this, we need some sort of guidance from an outside consultant. These are pretty complicated issues, and I can tell you that, you know, as you said, we've been at this for a few years now. We're very familiar with the property. Many of the commissioners have gone out there. I was out there pre-COVID. And, you know, it is just very hard at this point with the information we have and what we're getting back from our Urban Wilds program and the complexity of this area to feel fully confident and comfortable with any decision to close this hearing and issue an order of conditions this evening without some outside help. So with that, Elena, I'll go to you to see if you have anything.
Thank you. I think that my concerns have been addressed in this conversation.
Okay. And before we go to commissioners, just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConcomHearing. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan, what do you have?
I actually don't have any questions. I have heard a lot and I look forward to see how we're going to vote.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Thank you, Chair Parker, and want to thank the applicant for coming to us again with some additional changes. So, Mr. DeCoulos, apologies if I mispronounce your name. Did you say that you had an invasive management plan? Because I have not been able to find that in what you've submitted, and that's one of the main things that would really make me more comfortable with this project or approving this.
Yeah, John or Katya, could you address that?
It's not within my report. There is some form of management plan in the notes on the landscape sheet, I believe.
Right, I
But
think it speaks to mowing.
It's not a comprehensive plan at this point.
Right. Right, so I think there's that, because I think the planting plan looks great, and I'm not sure what the invasive pressure will be like. I'm not confident that I understand that the native plantings will outcompete what invasive plants are already there and may come there in fresh soil or whatever work is happening there.
Again,
I think
there's limited grading, so there's limited fresh soil.
Right, I think isn't soil being brought in though for some of the plantings?
There's limited. The only place that soil will be brought in for is outside of the erosion control barrier or on the project side of the erosion control barrier, which basically keeps the limit of work very tight to the project.
Right.
In terms of the buildings and whatever, only 920 square feet of grading is proposed in the waterfront area now. That's a significant reduction from the original proposal and even from the prior proposal.
And I do appreciate that. I think we all do. I'm thinking more about the area immediate, like for instance, this low meadow and some of the woody plantings and shrubs that are proposed. Something that would have made me feel more comfortable was some language in your filing about invasive plant management in those planting areas beyond saying that you're going to mow once a year. Speaking as a land manager and somebody who does this work a lot, I just, at least in the places where I work, even downstream of here, that would not cut it as far as invasive pressure is concerned. Unfortunately, as much as I wish it did, it doesn't. That would make my life a lot easier. So that was one of the main things I wanted to mention, is not seeing that more comprehensive management plan, and not looking for a super amazing spelled out to the T management plan, but I think some more strong language or more thought to what species may be present on site and what species may infiltrate the site, invasive species, and what prescribed management actions are best practice for those species would have made me feel a little bit better, especially not only after the planting, but pre-planting, what invasive pressure there may be there to make your overseeding of the wet mix most successful and most prepared to really do what you want it to do, which is add native restoration plantings along this resource area. And that's kind of the meat of what I'm talking about, is the long-term nature of restoration that we've talked about, at least in the hearing that I was in on a few months ago in June. So knowing that restoration is a process, and as much as I wish it were putting the plants in and mowing once a year, and I think Dr. Rockwood, you mentioned hand pulling as some weeds come up in our last hearing. I don't know that that's enough, unfortunately, for this restoration to really work. So that was really the main thing I wanted to talk about tonight.
Yeah. Commissioner Long, thank you for that. And we appreciate the pun on not being able to cut it, but You know, I don't see any reason why we couldn't make this, or the commission couldn't allow us to have this move forward with the condition being that an invasive management plan be submitted prior to demolition. I mean, it seems like it could easily be a condition of an order.
We have done that with previous projects, right? I think because I brought this up last time and I didn't really see much more language added to your filing since we talked last time. That's why I brought it up tonight, and why it felt like it might have been something that was missing that could have been added because it was brought up last time. With that, that's really all I have, Chair. But I appreciate everything the applicant is doing to make this work.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. So how are you going to avoid any siltation of the stream?
One of the third, I think it's the third or fourth slide, Chris, that showed the limits of the erosion control. I mean, it's a very clear limit shown in the plans and on this presentation as to what the limits of the work are, as well as where the erosion control barriers to be located. I think it's the fourth slide, Chris, maybe?
I saw that, but I couldn't be clear that the siltation would be avoided, or are you saying that there is still some risk?
No, there's no risk. I mean, if you look at the fifth slide, which shows the full extent of the property, you'll see that there's an orange heavy dashed line that shows where the limits of the erosion control barrier is located. And we've also provided some significant erosion and siltation control at the proposed outlet. So that again is shown on slide 5, which also happens to be sheet C5 of the drawings.
You know, the other two factors that come into that is we're proposing erosion control blankets wherever the grading is steeper than, I believe, 3 to 1. And also there's some distance between the erosion controls and the stream. There's 35 feet between the erosion control and the stream. So basically you have an entrenched silt fence and other perimeter erosion controls. You have erosion control blankets in the areas where grading is occurring within the erosion controls. Then there's also distance from the erosion controls down.
Appreciate that. So there's distance, but it is a slope, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole site's sloped. It becomes a more gradual slope down in that area, though.
Mm-hmm. And I know you described the hydrology earlier, but I was trying to follow the geography and I completely couldn't. If you don't mind, just explaining one more time how the stream is flowing. Is it flowing under or just around the site? And it daylights again. I mean, it comes up again at further downstream, I understand. If you don't mind explaining the hydrology of the site, I'd appreciate
I'll cover that one.
Yeah, Chris, sorry, Chris, could you bring up that slide?
Yeah, this one's good. The previous one. Okay, the stream comes onto the site through a 12 to 15 foot high concrete wall through a 21-inch pipe, which is above the ground surface. So the water flows in, drops to the ground surface. There's 3 open stream segments on the property, which are flagged with the A-series flags. And those 3 open stream segments are connected by various length culverts. The first one's, I believe, an 8-foot stone culvert. Then we have a corrugated metal pipe, which is, I think, 15 or so feet long. And then we have a longer plastic pipe that connects to the other property boundary. So basically the water flows onto the site through a culvert, flows through an open stream segment, flows through a culvert, through another open stream segment, through a culvert, through another open stream segment, through a culvert, and then off site.
Is that the extent of it?
On the site, yes.
And what about the comment that there are parts of the year, many parts of the year that there's no water to be seen?
Right. It's because it's an intermittent stream. It has a smaller watershed area, so it doesn't always contain flowing water.
Is it regular though when it does?
No, it's not.
It probably responds in response to heavy precipitation. It probably flows more in the spring than it does in the late summer. Probably flows a little bit in the winter as well. So when there's higher precipitation amounts and higher groundwater levels, the stream probably flows more than during drier times with less precipitation events.
So when you say spring, is that because ice melt, snow melt, that
Ice
kind
melt,
of?
snow melt, rain. Yes,
And elevated groundwater levels, as
and
John
higher
said.
groundwater levels as well.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it's regular though, right?
Oh,
Every
there's a regular flow that ebbs, and it's almost like a tidal cycle. But as Chairman Parker saw during his site visit, predominantly water is entering onto the site through that 21-inch reinforced concrete culvert, and then quickly infiltrates into the ground. So by the time you see that second photograph, the stream has actually infiltrated and is recharging the groundwater. So most of the stream, even during precipitation events, is because of the underlying pervious soil, is actually just infiltrating and not coming and breaching through above the surface. Ultimately, when it does go down onto the Allendale Woods and the Springhouse property, it does eventually, because of the surrounding wetlands downstream, become a perennial stream. But as John mentioned, the intermittent situation here of this channel is predominantly affected by precipitation events. And for most of the year, it's a dry channel, as you can see in the photos to the left.
Mm-hmm. Most of the year it's dry. I understand it's not perennial, but it does see water every year.
Yes.
We don't know for how long, maybe for a couple of months.
Right. Purely subject to precipitation and groundwater elevation.
And snow melt. And ice melt.
Yep, and snow melt. And one of the other things that we haven't explored is the possibility of sewer exfiltration from the 100 Allendale Street. For instance, we don't know if there's potential leaks in the sewer system from the 6 units at 100 Allendale that might be contributing to the flow. It's a highly impervious project at 100 Allendale, and we just don't fully understand or have characterized how that water is flowing onto our property. We're just dealing with what is, and we're looking and modeling this with the expectation that that 21-inch culvert is flowing full, and looking at the corresponding storm events at the 10, 25, and 100-year periods.
Thank you. Maybe staff can take a note of that point, maybe not relevant to this discussion, but thank you for sharing that. As for just one more question, you said you moved fully away from the resource area, which of course we completely appreciate. Does that mean the construction will also happen completely away from the resource area, as in no foundation work that'll touch the resource area, no other work that'll touch the resource area?
That's correct. For the above ground structures, the only subsurface structure that will be in the waterfront area is the stormwater infiltration field, which you can see on, if Chris, you could go to slide 5, you can see where that is. It's 2 prior slides, but the stormwater infiltration field is in the waterfront area, as you can see here, just below units 7 and 8. So that is in the waterfront area, but it will be completely below surface and subject to the full planting plan that Katya has prepared, which is on the last slide.
Great, thank you. I want to echo a couple of things though. Thanks for answering my questions. One, the invasive management plan, as somebody who deals with some of that myself, I know it is not insignificant work. So I appreciate Commissioner Long's comments there. And I do also want to echo the zoning relief that you need here and how I'd like to see that myself before we do anything here. But thank you. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I think that most of my questions, have been answered and discussed, but in the answer to one of the questions from the previous commissioner, I'm confused. And so I have a question about when you say it might be sewer water, isn't that something that you're wanting to know? And isn't it possible for you to figure that out through some sort of chemical tests or what?
Yes, no, Commissioner Richmond, we could sample that during certain storm event periods, but quite frankly, that's not our responsibility. That's more of a matter for the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. I just wanted to bring that up as a possibility. I didn't want you to think that what's coming out of that concrete pipe is pure untouched water. I mean, there's a good chance it's been influenced by man. And there's a good chance that there could be fecal coliform, nitrogen, phosphorus, maybe some other contaminants in that stream as it flows onto our property. We're not touching it. It's flowing as it is now off our property. We just didn't think it was relevant. We're not drinking it. We're not using it for any other purpose other than just protecting it. So it just doesn't seem relevant to know what the characteristics and the contaminants in that stream are.
Well, I mean, I suppose if you make that determination for your own property, then that's, what you're doing. But it certainly is information that, other people where that stream flows might feel differently. But anyway, that answers the question I had. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, time to open up for public comment. Does Paul Sutton, do you want to make any comments? Yes, you do. Hands up.
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, commissioners. Yeah, I would just say that, the comments here from the commissioners and from Boston Urban Miles program are really all intended to make the project better. That's the big picture. This is a super complex wetland system, as Chair Parker had mentioned, and it's a challenging site. It's a really steep, challenging site with a substantial development program. So I think that's what we're getting at. And some of the questions raised are really, really important, regarding the deed restriction. The commission and water and sewer, we've seen this where HOAs are responsible for landscape management, stormwater maintenance. Sharon Street, Hyde Park, think about that. The commission would be doing their due diligence if they didn't look at, the hydrology as it affects the vernal pool watershed. This is probably information that can be verified. We're just asking questions, really basic questions that can be verified. The same thing with the invasive plant management and land management. You're investing all this money in these improvements, but you want to make sure that they're successful long-term, and you really want to have these plans in place to do just that. So I just want to mention that. And regarding the water, this was a very busy summer for the stream, and we did see water coming from 90 Allendale to the Spring House for most of the summer. It's pretty reliable. We did a dye test. The water on the BCC land west of 100 Allendale is connected to this the 90 Allendale stream. So just wanted to make those points. But with that, I will yield.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I just quickly respond?
Of course. Yep.
So 2 points. Number one, as you know, Mr. Chairman, HOAs have different legal rules and rights than condominium associations. And I don't think it's, we're proposing a condominium association that has much stricter and enforceable rights than an HOA. Secondly, as far as the connection goes, the U.S. Supreme Court just heard a case on the nexus here under the Clean Water Act, and And, you know, what happens in this situation with water flowing onto this property is, as I mentioned, we have pervious material here, so it infiltrates quickly into the ground, and then it will down gradient as it goes to the Springhouse and Commission property at Allendale Woods. It will break out and then become surface water again. So just because, you know, it's seen on the down gradient property doesn't mean it's a surface flow throughout the 90 Allendale property.
Okay. Okay. I'm not going to get into a legal debate about the recent Supreme Court ruling and the effect it has on this project and our hearing tonight. But I take your points. I think we have Frank on the phone, 645.
Yeah, hi. I'm on the phone to offer a few comments. I'm also video, but the video is not working great. But thanks all for hearing this lengthily. It is, as stated, a really sensitive area. There's a lot of history here. I won't repeat a number of the things that were raised. I was going to raise, but they've been well covered. I do want to commend and acknowledge the work by the development team. They've put a lot of time and effort into this, working with us as residents and working as well with city staff and such. So that really needs to be underscored. The things that I would say that haven't been covered either fully or too much are as follows. The value of a consultant review for looking at the site, I think that's a great idea, in part because many of the concerns that the consultant can look at were actually originally raised in the April 2021 letter. So they're not new. They've been on the record for a while. And I would definitely encourage the team to meet directly with the Urban Wilds and Parks Department people. I know that was one of the reasons for the stated continuance, and having that direct meeting, and Paul has a lot and others have a lot of expertise. So a direct meeting could help bring a lot of these issues to resolution. The conservation restriction versus deed restriction issue, I suspect the language could probably be worked out, but there are some very specific concerns, like third-party enforceability is a huge issue. We faced that over here with the agreement that existed between the Arboretum and BPDA, where BPDA was cool with a change for a protected area, and residents and others, we said, no, we can't, but we couldn't enforce it because of third party. So that third party enforceability is really key. In terms of a management plan, a site management plan, it's not clear whether or not there'll be resident activity in that protected area. You got to believe the residents are going to want to come down to the woods and to come down to that really nice sloping yard in the stream. So, for example, issues like, would there be dogs there? You know, and I know that's kind of a laughable thing in a way, but you know, where the dogs go, it makes a difference. I will clarify that this whole wetland system and stream system really starts on the other side of Allendale, up in the Brandegie estate and the Boston Police Department stables and police dog training area. It does flow under the road. It goes through that heavily infrastructured area. But then downstream, as was mentioned, there's the wetland in the Springhouse CR area. There's the vernal pool. It does flow through Hebrew Rehab, but then it goes into the Buzzy Brook, which itself is a rare urban daylighted stream. So what happens upstream affects what happens downstream for sure. So the uses on site have definite resource impacts. And last point goes to the question of sort of where Conservation Commission review fits into overall city review. And we know the commission has a hell of a lot of work going on, and we totally appreciate that. And it's not easy to navigate projects through the city, no question, right? Where a project is a proposed forbidden use that goes against the approved community plan, we definitely see a higher elevated reasoned assessment of whether approving a project that's forbidden that hasn't received the approvals, and that's been addressed by Chair Parker. But I will say that the applicant has yet to apply for a BPDA review. So they haven't met the requirement of the Wetlands Protection Act. You know, a pre-filed meeting is not a filing, so that still needs to be complied with. Stefanos is quite right. The application, strictly speaking, doesn't need to be approved, it just needs to be filed. But the filing with the zoning commission was faulty, materially faulty. It didn't give the right addresses, and that hasn't been fixed. So the question is that even a correct filing? And then, of course, there's a demolition permit. So none of those were included in Appendix A, I think, as the conservation agent had requested last time. So a lot of work has been done. We totally appreciate it. We still have serious concerns more on the zoning side at this juncture, but certainly with the Conservation Commission procedure and protection of the woods and the resources. So with that, we would definitely support the approach outlined by the chair and others. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Frank.
May I reply to that, please?
Yeah, please do.
Yes, so the numbers were not faulty. The numbers that the city provided were faulty. And actually it took us about 2.5 months to sort through all that. The city was confusing our project with the project next door. And then we received 2 sets of numbers since then. But it took a lot of work from Gary Hendren and John Pulgini to square this thing out. And as far as dogs go, yes, we would welcome dogs in the development. And we actually have a lot of support dogs everywhere we go. And we welcome that very much. And I walk my dog every day here, and I walk my dog every day in the Arboretum. And it's a great thing to do. As far as the rest of the items that we discussed, as a developer, I'm not a consultant. I really don't know what else to do on a site where we have no performance standards. I am directing the team, and the team is directing me to do everything we have been asked to do. We're staying away not only from the resource area, but out of the buffer area. We're not building. We have very minimal grading. We're sort of creating these. We're sort of chasing a ghost. We're creating these standards along with you. And I think the team has done a great job for us to perform and to make this a very successful project for the future, as Commissioner Sutton said. Or Paul Sutton said. Apologies. So I understand the PBDA. Again, I go back to the PBDA has been. I mean, we've been trying to get them forever. Finally, we did. We had 2 meetings. It has been a nightmare of its own. I don't want to say any more on that. I do believe it's a technicality, but I also believe that at this point, I don't know what else to do. I mean, we're staying away from the buffer zone, never mind the resource area. I thought it was a buffer zone, and we have between plantings and management. I feel we have done everything we have been asked to do. So that's I think that we have certain standards under the ordinance, and it's they're not easy to identify and to sort of apply. And I think we have done it, even though they're not easy. So that's all I have to say. I just don't know where to go, where we go from here as a developer, what else we can do to satisfy the commission.
Okay, thank you. And I can hear your exasperation. I can hear your frustration. Again, there are still some questions that are open. And I think Frank brought it up. Have you met with the Urban Wild Program to go through their issues, issue by issue?
No, Mr. Chairman, we have not, but we have addressed every one of the issues. And again, today's comments were last minute, but every letter that Urban Wild and comment that they've submitted, we've addressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, admittedly, the email was late today, but I think it really reiterated most of the issues that have been brought up in the previously. And I understand you've addressed them, but have you come to a resolution? Have you sat down with Paul, if he has the time to? He clearly doesn't think that they're completely addressed. I think a few of the commissioners don't feel they're completely addressed or resolved. Let's say resolved. I know you've addressed them. So the question still stands. It feels like if Paul is willing to do so, it feels like a meeting with Paul would be instructive.
Well, as a developer, again, I can say that, I feel that we have done a lot of what Mr. Sutton has asked based on his first letter from our last submittal. Yes, today's letter was a surprise, especially some of the comments, because I almost felt they were reflecting last submittal, because we don't have any construction work or any patios behind buildings 5 and 6. But if that will make the commission feel better, that a meeting with Mr. Sutton, even on site, if that would make the commission feel better, I don't know how Jim DeCoulos and John Rockwood would feel to have a meeting.
Okay, well, I'll leave it up to you. It's not a matter of making us feel better. It's a matter of resolving these issues with our Urban Wilds program. Obviously have a big interest in the urban wilds that are proximate to your property. So with that, I guess we have a few things here. I don't see any other hands up. I do see, okay, Ms. Donovan.
John,
Yes. Hello?
Hello, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay. Elizabeth Donovan, and I live at 109, 107 Allendale Street. And I just have a couple of concerns in addition to the wetlands issues. One is, I'm sure you're all aware of the fact that the zoning prohibits, doesn't allow, subject to the granting of a variance, but prohibits townhouses on this property. And granted, in number 64, the ZBA ignored that and went about its business. So we have, what's going on is called spot zoning. So 64 gets spot zoned with townhouses, and now number 90 is looking for townhouses, which would be another spot zoning. If the city of Boston wishes to redo their zoning, there's a mechanism to do that, which would involve the citizens of the city of Boston. They haven't done that. They're doing this piecemeal through the ZBA, which is absolutely positively outrageous. So I would just encourage the commission to withhold any decision until the ZBA has an opportunity to decide. And then if we can gather, depending on which way it goes, gather enough support, we'll move forward.
Okay, anything else?
Mr.
One
Chairman,
other thing, one other thing. There was a mention about number 90. There's actually 4 houses on number 90, not 6. One is an attachment, was granted that way, and we challenged that, saying that was an independent house, and they said, no, it's attached to the garage. But be that as it may, there's someone else living in that that's not living in the other portion of the house. And for anyone that's not aware, I believe all of the sewer from that development, which are all single-family houses, is pumped upstream to Allendale Street. So if there's any leakage, it would be somewhere in that those pipes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Donovan.
Mr. Chairman, may I just respond real brief?
Sure.
What happens with zoning and the ZBA is clearly outside the jurisdiction of the commission here. Spot zoning's been going on in Boston for a long time. And lastly, the point I think that Frank O'Brien brought up about the application status with BPDA. As you know, BPDA requires pre-file meetings as part of the application process, and we've already had 2 pre-file meetings. A third one's being scheduled. So we are clearly in the process that BPDA has laid out. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So I think first order of business for the commission is to determine whether we want a consultant review. So I'll throw that out there, see if it passes. So entertain a motion to require consultant review for this project.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll take it to a vote. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
Aye.
Okay, and I voted aye. Okay, so we get that out of the way. The process for that is Eleanor will follow up with a letter. We'll solicit from our usual band of consultants an estimate on services and get that to you. So I guess if we are going to since we passed the first motion, the other motion left here is to motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So that carries 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Great, Mr. Chairman, we're seeking a decision, as I said earlier. And I know the commission just voted to continue, but as I stated in my initial presentation, we're seeking a decision tonight.
Okay. I think you'll have to go to DEP for that. And then as far as under the ordinance, I think it's Superior Court if you're looking for a decision.
Could we get a vote from the commission on a decision tonight rather than continuance?
No, we've already made our vote here. So. Okay, next item on the
Thank you.
agenda is, thank you. Notice of intent for DEP file number 0061958 and Boston file number 2023-048 from BSC Group Inc. on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed construction of a multi-use trail and amenities along the Neponset River and Edgewater Drive between Osceola Street and Kennedy Playground located in Hyde Park and Mattapan. Resource areas are bordering land subject to flooding, 25-foot riverfront area, 25-foot waterfront area, and 100-foot buffered bank. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi,
Good
this
evening.
is- Oh, sorry, Stella.
Oh, that's okay. Good evening, Commission. I'm Stella Lansing. I'm the project manager for DCR on this project, and I'm joined by Diana Walden from BC Group, as well as Singning Co. and Ricardo Ostrich.
Okay, floor is all yours.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for hearing our project this evening. Our project is a half a mile long trail between the Neponset River and along within the Edgewater and Belknap neighborhood of Boston. And this is a project that has been in the works through partnership with these community groups and DCR. And with that, oh, sorry. And one of the things that, is very important for this community is to provide much needed connection to the resource in these neighborhoods, and also to help improve habitat value and improve safety and reduce some illegal dumping and other unwanted activities in this neighborhood. So, and with that, I will hand it over to Diana to present the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. This is Diana Weldon from BSC Group. As Stella mentioned, this is the DCR Edgewater Trail project along the Neponset River and Edgewater Drive. It's located in both the Mattapan and Hyde Park neighborhoods. The project design and amenities have been shaped by extensive community outreach to determine what the public and neighborhood want to see for safe, equitable access to the river. If you would like to scroll forward a few slides, please. And right there, please, thank you. So just to give you context of the location, this is the USGS view as well as the city context as to where the project is located. And on the next slide, thank you. So the trail will run generally northeast to southwest. It's parallel to both the Neponset River and Edgewater Drive. runs from some playground work near Tesla Street on the northeast portion of the project to Osceola Street at the southwest portion. The paved Edgewater Drive ends approximately halfway through the route, and at this point, the project continues along the back of residential properties and side streets on the DCR reservation property. And this is also about the location where the trail moves from the riverside of a existing masonry wall to the residential side. And actually, if you want to go to the next slide, please. This was what Stella quickly alluded to, the various goals for the project, bringing people, into a safe, accessible location, access to the river. And it would be both ADA accessible and also bringing people into a safer location. I'll get into some of the existing conditions that make the neighborhood feel like this is not a location that they want to spend much time. And actually, if you want to flip to the next slide, please. So this is a mostly deciduous forested corridor located between the Neponset River and either Edgewater Drive or the residences, depending on what part of the project route you're on. And approximately 5-foot tall masonry walls also located along this boundary. There's a fairly steep embankment to the river, but first break in slope was what was delineated for the top of bank on a lower terrace of the embankment. Mean high water was located slightly higher along the embankment, and the 1% annual chance floodplain, flood zone A, also bordering land subject to flooding, is fairly contained to those lower slope terraces. So on our project site, we have the 25-foot riverfront area, the 25-foot waterfront area, and 100-foot buffer zone to the bank. And there were no areas of associated BBW along this stretch of the river. So in addition to the forested areas, we have portions of the jurisdictional project locations are already developed as impervious roadways, sidewalks, previously developed lawn areas, the existing wall, and also the existing Kennedy playground. There is also a worn down informal footpath within the woods. There's a significant amount of invasive species, and as Stella mentioned, numerous areas of illegal dumping, particularly landscape wastes, concrete bricks, loam, branches, things of that nature, as well as just general debris and trash kind of scattered throughout this corridor. So on the next page, please. So just a quick rundown of the project details. It would be approximately half-mile long, 8-foot wide asphalt trail with 2-foot shoulders on either side. We've estimated a 20-foot wide swath required for clearing in the construction of the project. And then in the limits of work, which extend sometimes an additional 10 feet on either side, approximately 40-foot wide in most areas, there'd be select grubbing and tree removal in order to accommodate invasive species management and then the replanting of native species and seeding with native ground cover mixes. And in addition to the trail, there would be an infiltration swale built into the shoulder and leaching basins at low spots in order to improve stormwater management and accommodate the fact that we are adding this trail. There's spots where the existing masonry wall would be removed or lowered and wall seats are proposed. There's several river overlooks or timber decks at the wall. These would not extend into the river or over the mean high water line, but they would just be viewing platforms for people to access the river and take in the scenery. There's 2 locations of granite step access. One replaces existing wood and gravel steps down to the river near the Kennedy playground, and the other would be a new granite step access. And those would stop just shy of the mean high water line. And then there'd be multiple improvements at the Kennedy playground where the existing play surface would be replaced and expanded over some maintained lawn areas. There's proposal for picnic areas and bike racks and a concrete pad in those locations, as well as an adult fitness area. And in addition, there'd be lighting, benches, amenities, and markers typical of a DCR trail. Okay, next page, please. So this was the project impact table included with the notice of intent. As you can see, the majority of the impacts do occur in that 25-foot waterfront area, just due to the nature of the embankment and where the trail is sited. The existing DCR parcel is fairly narrow in general, and they sited the trail to take advantage of the least amount of tree clearing and also the various constraints of residences and existing infrastructure. And so we tried to stay out of the 25-foot riverfront area as much as possible with approximately 3,071 square feet of permanent impact, and then a total of 14,510 square feet when you include temporary impacts from invasive species management, removing some trees for the benefit of native species to be planted. And then, as you can see, the higher amounts for waterfront area. And then additionally, some impacts to the outer 50 feet of the 100-foot buffer zone. We do have a small amount of bordering land subject to flooding impacts as well in order to replace and install those 2 stepped access points to the river. We calculated approximately a decrease of compensatory flood storage of 41 cubic feet. And we are asking the commission to consider that as about a 1.5 cubic yard loss to be negligible and de minimis in this case. Next page, please. We'd also provided some summary of the trees greater than 6 inches DBH that would be removed. And we broke down the numbers through the various resource areas and buffers, being the riverfront area, the waterfront, and buffer zone. And Elena did let us know that some commissioners had asked for a different breakdown to describe which trees and the number of trees lost in the footprint of the path and shoulders versus that point from the 20-foot to the 20-foot construction swath, and from that point to the outer limits of work. And I do have those numbers, and maybe I'll continue with the presentation, and if we want to get into additional questions, I could go through them at that point. But in addition to the tree removals, there are then 115 native trees to be replanted, 330 native shrubs to be planted, and numerous native species seed mixes for ground cover. And as mentioned, there'd also be a large effort to manage invasive species in this area. And I don't know if you want to keep flipping forward to we have some plans. And just to kind of give you an idea of where the various resources fall, the blue line is the top of bank line delineated. The mean high water is just a contour above that in most locations. And the riverfront area and waterfront area were pulled as an offset off of the mean high water. So the pink is the riverfront area and the orange line is the Boston waterfront area. And if you'd like to keep scrolling forward, you can kind of see how the riverfront area is avoided to the extent practicable, and but just the nature of the width of the parcel and bringing people into this resource, a majority of the impacts are occurring in that middle river waterfront area zone. And this is the southwest portion of the project as we move northeast. So again, the pink shows the riverfront area where on this half of the project, we are staying on the residential side of the existing masonry wall. And that's that gray shaded line you can see where the white represents the new path. And at this curve in the river, the parcel widens, and we're able to get a little further from the river and provide some additional buffer. And you can see this is the new access, the new granite step access down to the river near Burma Street. And this is as we start to approach the Kennedy Playground, where the adult fitness center would be installed basically across the street from Topolian Street. And then the improvements as described would happen in the Kennedy Playground footprint. And the next several set of slides are the same views, just focusing more on the planting plan and the species provided and proposed in those areas. And we also have a number of slides that can take us through each of the sections of the trail, so we can see a plan view rendering of the various street intersections, and then how the section of the trail would be installed in those locations. So if there's any interest in just kind of flipping through the rest of the slides, we can also focus on particular street crossings if that makes sense for the commissioner's questions.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, if you'd like to maybe flip forward about 5 or 6 more slides, please. And you could actually keep going just a bit more. Yep. And maybe 2 or 3 more slides, please. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Maybe 5 more slides or so.
You came well prepared.
Just in case we wanted to talk about the various locations. So we have a series of these kind of renderings. And then if you go 1 more slide over, we have various cross sections to show where the masonry wall exists compared to the various resource areas, and where the trail and the other amenities would be. So we can maybe stop here and take any questions.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, because we have all 43 slides in our drive here, plus your materials, which were very comprehensive. Okay. So a couple of quick questions here. One had to do with the tree removal, and we've been talking a lot. Maybe other commissioners will ask this question. We've been talking about leaving invasive trees up, or cutting trees down, and something I've seen lately, having like a stump area for the wildlife habitat remain, because there's value to the trees that you're taking down beyond pruning and putting in healthier trees. That was one thing that I know we'd probably want to address. The other thing is, Commissioner Herbst isn't here tonight. We talked briefly on this the other day. She had a question, and we had a little bit of a back and forth on this. She had a question about the asphalt paving and why the path needed to be completely asphalt. What I mentioned to her was I'd seen that same situation elsewhere, where, and this has to do a little bit different, but it's the Harbor Walk, where there's a portion of the Harbor Walk that I'm familiar with, and the developer didn't want to build a boardwalk. And so he got some sort of exemption to put down stone dust. And that seemed fine, but it washes out a lot, and there's a person who lives near there with accessibility issues. And she didn't like it. So I guess with that backdrop, maybe some color on why you chose asphalt as opposed to stone dust. Is it for accessibility, or is there better formulations of stone dust that would address accessibility issues and washouts?
Right. So, Commissioner, I can address that question. We had brought this question to the community. We had asked, we like to use an alternative surface made with a proprietary material called organic lock, which is pretty impervious and can also provide can be accessible. The issue with this material and the location with this area is it is a little bit more difficult for us for DCR to maintain, and we find specifically, in dealing with trails that need to be more accessible, asphalt works really well for us, and the alternative material isn't impervious, so you're not gaining anything by putting down a material that is like stone dust, but is just as hard as asphalt, which then is a little bit more challenging to be able to maintain in terms of if you have a lot of rain, or if you also have a lot of leaf litter maybe falling onto the material, it's a little bit tougher for us to maintain as an agency. And so we wanted to be open with the community about that, and they also indicated that they would prefer to have a material that's a little bit more resilient and robust, so that, in the event that DCR doesn't get around to maintaining it as frequently, that it's not a huge issue.
Okay, thank you, Stella. Okay, I'll leave the discussion about the trees to the rest of the commissioners here. Elena, do you have anything regarding this filing?
I do not have anything on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, in the reconnaissance for the civil drawings and stuff, did you find any outfalls from the municipal stormwater system that would cross through this area up to the Neponset, and manholes or other such things?
I don't believe so, but I would definitely want to bring that question back to our civil engineer and the stormwater designer. I don't know if Ricardo or
Yeah,
Stella might know.
I don't believe that was, we have an MWRA sewer siphon.
Yeah, there's
Cross,
no.
so that's a municipal thing, but that is not open, and that does not actually, collect any rainwater. I believe in terms of the stormwater design, our civil and transportation group did not find anything, so that's why we used infiltration to handle the stormwater, because it was
right.
Yeah, no, I was looking more for if there's an existing municipal outfall that is in need of repair before you make a beautiful site, so they get to show you how to destroy a beautiful site.
Right.
So, I can take a look at that. Are you guys fully funded for this, or is this another dream?
The plan is we have received ARPA funding, so yes, it is fully funded.
All right. And during the winter, I assume you don't plow this thing, you just let nature melt the snow and life is good.
Yeah, I mean, we have had, our plan right now is not, if we were to do some snow removal or plowing, it would be, a small swath. We have got requests from the community along the Neponset to do snow removal. In terms of plowing, not too much. It will be like a second or third priority plowing for the rest of the Neponset Greenway. So we're not entirely sure what type of request we would receive from the community here. So that hasn't come up yet, and that would be an important question to ask them as well. But, we tend to, if that gets requested by the community, we'd like to oblige.
And finally, sometimes people walk on trails and have bottled water, instead of using thermoses full of good Boston water, but they have the plastic bottles. Are you guys anticipating any type of litter baskets with street ends where you can easily pick them up and change them, but it gives people an opportunity? And also for dog people, hold on to that bag as long as they can take it, then they just dump it somewhere. But if they know there's a receptacle somewhere, they'll tend to dump it in the receptacle.
I believe we have, number one, we have bottled water fillers planned for the playground. And then I think that we do have some trash receptacles planned for the playground.
And so you think you do, or should we?
Yeah, yes, Ricardo, I think we did add that.
Yes, I'm gonna go through here now.
Just
gonna confirm that we do.
Yeah, we have a trash receptacle.
Trash receptacle.
Thank you, Signal.
Yeah, at the Kennedy Playground.
Thank you.
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah, okay. I just want to double check. So again, on the funding, you've got some opera funds. You got enough opera funds, or you just kind of got? This is a-
No, we have enough.
All right, that's all I have for questions.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Commissioner Long?
Thank you, Chair Parker. So I love this talk about stone dust. As somebody who maintains stone dust paths, they are very hard to maintain, especially with those heavy flows. And granted, I'm not an expert in this, but I was wondering if DCR maintains pathways with permeable pavers, so those paver blocks with the voids between them. Stella, you're shaking your head no.
No, it's just, it becomes, I think that for us being able to have things just be very simple and have only, two or three types of, or one or two types of materials, basically, it just simplifies everything that we have to do. We look after 450,000 acres in Massachusetts, so it's a lot. And if you can just simplify your materials, we have had some of those blocks that you're referring to, and unfortunately they just become tripping hazards over time, just because we can't keep up with that type of maintenance.
Okay, understood. I think
Yeah.
other, maybe other commissioners would bring this up. Maybe Ann Herbst would have. But yeah, the idea of pavement or asphalt in the riverfront area, I don't think is our favorite, but I'll leave that up to other folks to discuss if they'd like to. I guess the thing that I'm interested in is the invasive species management. I know it's a big push during the construction phase, but we also know that seed bank and all of that soil is probably still filled with invasive seeds. And right now, as it is, this land that we're talking about is more or less unmaintained unless there's some maintenance that needs to happen, which was brought up in your alternatives analysis. So I'm wondering, with this proposed path, if it were put in and the native plantings went in and that big construction phase invasive work happened, would there be sort of ongoing maintenance from DCR's end or a contractor to stay on top of what invasives may come back up?
Yeah, this is a really tricky thing again for our agency. We we don't have a program that is very large in order to handle invasive control post-construction. So we do look at trying to get some of that control and eradication during construction. We often have 2 or 3 applications during construction or treatments during construction, and then hope that we get good. Well, we have make sure we have good establishment of the new vegetation during the construction period, and then we do look after our we have a establishment period post-construction that continues for the new vegetation. But unfortunately, continuing invasive management on such a large scale is a challenge for us. So we, in most of our projects, we rely on that really heavily during construction, and then hope to get as we can post-construction with ongoing maintenance.
Okay, yeah, I figured it's quite the stretch to kind of maintain.
Right.
And you are opening this up for public access, which is
right.
amazing. So I think the vegetation is still of concern, but you providing public access kind of alleviates that a little bit in this water area at least. Okay, I think that more or less wraps it up. I was happy to see that tree pruning and tree maintenance plan. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Conan.
Thank you, Chair Parker. So Stella, I think I appreciate the fallback to status quo here. That it's just easier, it's just more robust, it's just what we're familiar with, it costs less overall, we can't maintain so much space, that kind of narrative. But this is an era of impending climate disaster, and we're likely expecting torrential downpour and all kinds of extreme weather events. This project doesn't increase the permeable space. It kind of creates asphalt. We're all familiar with how asphalt works, and it's robust, as you said, and then we compensate for it with some swales and whatnot. What I would have liked to see, this is a government initiative, and if government can do innovation and can show leadership, what would have made me happy to see is, hey, we figured out a way to create this permeable approach. Yes, it's going to cost a lot, but this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to have to do going forward. And it's not going to be stone dust. It has maybe its issues, and they're too much. It's not going to be asphalt either, because we're done with that. But we're going to do permeable pavements and try to maintain them, something like that. When will we see that kind of innovation and change here, or will we always fall back to what we're comfortably familiar with?
That's you bring up a really good point. It is something that we are definitely working through within our agency. We have a climate resiliency office. There are a lot of things that, yes, we do need to explore, what type of permeable paving solutions we can come up with. On the other hand, we have to be able to maintain a good resource for the community. And then, we try and balance it off with having other best management practices. In other words, capturing the stormwater and having an infiltration trench running along the trail. So, impervious surface definitely does do a lot of infiltration, but it's not the only way to advance additional infiltration. So we wanted to focus on at least making it successful for now, and then in the future, at some point we have to replace the surface of the trail. So, and then there's another opportunity to revisit maybe an alternative that's more pervious.
So not now, but later?
I mean, we have to look at the reality. I mean, right now we have this solution. It doesn't mean that it is the only solution that we are going to stick with forever in the future. But at this point, we do not have an alternative solution at DCR that we are comfortable with, that we know that we can maintain and have successful for this neighborhood. We need to balance what works with, having this resource open up for the community.
Commissioner Conan, I think I would prefer an asphalt with a stone trench beside it, which will probably last 15 years without them doing anything with, compared to another type of system with their great maintenance record that will probably fail in 3 years.
If it helps to evaluate, we as a footpath or non-motorized path, we are subject to the stormwater management standards to the maximum extent practicable. So our stormwater management report that was included was demonstrating that for most of the standards, we actually have met them even more than the max extent practical required. The one that is a challenge and is the stormwater runoff rates. So we have only met that to the extent practicable, but we did meet standard 3, the groundwater recharge requirements, using the infiltration trench and the leaching basins. So in that sense, at least, the recharge is happening, the runoff rates are exceeded, but as Stella mentioned, the trench and the efforts made do at least reduce the effect of the asphalt.
Thank you, Diana. So is the ARPA funding a one-off or regular?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
ARPA funding is, I guess I know the answer. This is an occasional source of funding, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, it is a one-off.
Yeah. All right, so in terms of, I mean, so the infiltration systems sound good, and would you consider putting signs up as to what that is achieving? So at least this leads to education for the people walking by.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe the infiltration trench is going to be visible, but yes, we can definitely, we haven't designed any of those signs yet, but we could definitely put something up, and we could put it up near the Kennedy Playground or along the trail that explains how we are capturing runoff and infiltrating it. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, really appreciate it. How and also why, if you don't mind, because I think kids will understand,
Right.
appreciate and will benefit from learning that. So if the solution is invisible, that's even more reason to put up signs.
Right.
That's what has been done there. Thank you. That's all support.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe it was in the materials and or in your presentation and I didn't hear it. How old is the path that you're now replacing?
There is no formal path at the moment. It's just a desire line actually that was created by people walking in that area.
And so what is your expectation about how long this path will last?
Well, we imagine it'll be at least 10 years for the surface of the trail would last, if not more, hopefully.
Okay, I mean, is there and you're the reason to do it the way you're doing it, if I understood your answers to others' questions, is money?
Well, not only money, but ease of maintenance. Sometimes as an agency, it's really difficult sometimes to procure these specialty surfaces, or if you needed to go and patch like the organic lock material to go and patch that, it's a challenge for our operations staff to get a hold of the material and to do the patchwork. So asphalt is an easier for ease of maintenance. We have statewide paving contracts annually that can help with maintenance if there is an issue that comes up and we need to repair parts of the trail, and then so that just makes it from an operational standpoint a better solution for us.
And what is the 10-year life expectancy of this based on?
Well, we have seen on the Neponset River Greenway, we've seen at least 10 years. We've seen on the Charles River at least 10 or 15 years. And most of the time, the issues that we do see is root intrusion from adjacent trees. And then those can be patched addressed individually. And then, after about 15 years, we'll do a whole removal of the top course and replacement of the top course of pavement. So it depends on, what those conditions look like.
Because I'm asking these questions because, the likely attack, and you can put that in quotes, on this trail is not probably going to be what has been in the past, the root systems and stuff. It's likely, I presume, to be rising water. And, and that impact, it seems to me, is different. And, 10 years is probably, not going to, what we hope is not going to have the kind of substantial rising water that's going to just sweep it away. But
right.
I guess I would be happier, I'm just going to put that in quotes too, if there was some way to address the issue of the rising water. I think that's what Commissioner Kennan was asking about. Anyway,
well, Commissioner Richmond, if I might just address that concern, I think one of the things that we do feel comfortable with is that the elevation of the trail compared to the mean high water is quite significant. It might be at least 5 feet. And then also the Neponset is controlled. The level of the river is controlled to some extent by some dams within the river in this area. So the level of the river doesn't fluctuate as much. And we have seen a lot of rain this season, and it's rarely risen above the mean high water during this heavily wet season. And I've been out on the site quite a lot with the community and with our project team.
Well, that that certainly makes me feel better, you know, I just want to say that I'm absolutely in favor of the concept of what you guys are doing, not only here, but in other projects of making these parks more accessible and for everyone. So 3 cheers for that. I'm sorry you don't have more money to do it a little bit differently, but thank you for your answers to my questions.
Pleasure.
Great, thank you. Elena, I don't see any hands up. Do you?
We have one hand up. I think the name is Sharon's iPhone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sharon. I think I spoke to Stella maybe once or twice since I got involved with this, with whatever they're trying to do over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can argue everything what Stella just said, but I'm not going to argue everything she just said. I'm against it. For one reason, I live on the corner of Matakeesia and Edgewater Drive, okay? 51. And directly across from my house is where they want to open up the wall as the accessibility for emergency vehicles too, which is going to be, I don't know how many feet they ever told me that it was going to be. Directly across the street from my house, okay? Now, one question I'd like to ask her is, no, okay, I want to make a comment. The reason why over that wall looks like it does right now, if y'all ever seen it like live, is because it's been neglected for over 40-something years. They have never came down and done anything over there since I've been living here, and I've been living here since 78. So one of my questions is for her and everyone else is, if and when, which I hope they don't do it right now because we have other problems that need to be addressed besides this park, is what are they going to do with the rodent control? I've worked very, very hard to get my house rodent free. I don't have no animals or anything like that, but I worked hard to, to do all the holes and stuff. What are they going to do for the rodent control? One. What are they going to do for the parking? That's going to be directly across the street from my house. I would like both of those questions answered, please.
Okay, Sharon, thank you for your comments, and I understand your concerns here. I just want to mention that this is a conservation commission, and so issues like rodent control and parking, that's more ISD with the city. That's not really our department. We don't regulate any of that. Our regulations are aimed at the wetlands area and how this project will affect the resource areas from a wetlands perspective. What you've brought up so far, and I'll let Stella address your comments, but I just want to let you know there's not anything that we can do about those issues because it's not within our jurisdiction. So Stella,
let me answer that real quick. So would they have to have a plan in place for all of that, or do they just start digging and whatever happens?
Yeah, I'll let Stella address that question.
Okay.
Stella, if you could do that briefly, then we're gonna.
Right. So thank you for your questions and your comments. We don't have any parking as part of our project. So there's on-street parking on Edgewater, but that's it. We haven't created any additional parking for the public to come to this trail. So this is, you come here through the neighborhood and the community and access from other walkable areas. With regards to rodent control, I really don't have any plan for rodent control. It's not something I can control. I'm not really certain what you mean by rodent control. I mean, certainly there are rodents all around. There's nothing that DCR can specifically do about that.
Sure. My suggestion is, I don't know if you've tried this, but ISD has a department and people specialize in rodent control. I would suggest that you call them directly. I think that's your best avenue.
But I'm not going to be argumentative today. Like I'm not going to do that today.
Okay, I
But
appreciate.
how long? Let me ask her this: how long does she think it's going to take for this project to actually get off the ground? If it took them 40 years to get to this point, how long does she think it's going to take for them to start?
Well, I'm
You want to
hoping
answer these? Go ahead.
I'm hoping we can start in the spring.
Oh, you start next year. Okay. Well, I'm the only one on this call that's going to be directly affected. None of y'all on this call is going to be affected. I do not want them to open up a wall over here by at my house where they're going to be the emergency vehicles and everything else, and everybody else can go up in there. So that's why I'm on this call, because I don't want it directly across from my house.
Okay,
Understood.
understood.
That's why I'm on this call.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, Elena, anyone else?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay.
No, no one else.
And I understand that we don't have Stella, you haven't returned a draft of the order of conditions.
That's correct. And we were going to actually ask for a continuation so we could have our legal team review it, just because they haven't had a chance yet, and we didn't want to close the hearing without having that reviewed.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Ty and Bond on behalf of the Boston Gas Company for the proposed replacement of existing gas mains located at Columbia Road in South Boston. And I think it's Julia is up on this.
Yes, hello.
Hello. It's been a little while since we've seen you. What, about
Yes.
a month? Floor is all yours.
Thank you. So my name is Julia Novotny from Ty and Bond, speaking tonight on behalf of Boston Gas Company. Next slide, please. You can go a couple more slides. Yeah, perfect. So as mentioned, this project is a gas main replacement project in Columbia Road between 1226 and 1430 and 1756 and 1860 Columbia Road. So two different portions of the roadway. The replacement consists of approximately 4,010 linear feet of existing gas main, which currently is 6-inch diameter gas main comprised of cast iron coated steel and plastic, depending on the area. And that will be replaced with the same length of 8-inch diameter gas main, plastic gas main in the roadways of Columbia Road and adjacent roadways, including the majority of P Street as well. Next slide, please. So the work will consist of the excavation of trenches approximately 2 feet wide and 3 feet deep in the roadway right-of-way to replace the gas main. The pipes will be supported at that depth of 3 feet below the existing surface grades of the roadway. The exact locations of the trenches will be determined based on existing utilities, subsurface utilities. And all trenches will be backfilled daily and restored in kind following the completion of the replacement of the gas mains. The work will be conducted with standard construction equipment mobilized in the roadway, including a dump truck and excavator. Next slide, please. National Grid will use their standard best management practices, erosion control measures, particularly silt sack inserts along the perimeter of work, as well as, if necessary, straw bales, straw wattles between wetland resource areas and the limits of work. And these BMPs will be inspected after precipitation events and kept in good working order by the contractor. Next slide, please. So the work in question is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. In this area, it has an 11-foot base flood elevation. And so a portion of the work, approximately 2,300 linear feet, 4,600 square feet approximately, of this replacement work is going to be within those limits of land subject to coastal storm flowage. There are no other resource areas that the work is within. It's adjacent to the buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone to Coastal Beach, but it's not within that buffer zone. And it's not anticipated that the work will adversely impact this resource area because it is within previously paved areas, and the roadway will be restored to pre-existing conditions and the elevations are not changing. Next slide, please. Sorry, this looks a little bit wonky. This is just a screenshot of the figure that was submitted. This is the work, the first portion of the work between 1226 and 1430 Columbia Road. So the majority of this work is not within land subject to coastal storm flowage, but a portion of it is on the western side. Next slide, please. And this is the second portion of the work, which the majority of it is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and it's not within the 100-foot buffer zone, but it is close to it, adjacent to Old Harbor and Coastal Beach. And that's all I have initially. Are there any questions?
Great, thank you. I don't have any. Elena, do you have any questions?
Not on this one, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, you call it a relay of your gas main, but in essence, what you're showing us with no plans is you're gonna run down the street, or if you can, lay it in somewhere in the asphalt paving.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, you call it a relay of a gas main.
Mhm.
Yeah, you've yet to relay any of your gas mains in the city. You lay down a new pipe wherever you want to within a paved area. Is that what you're doing here? You're just gonna be somewhere in Columbia Road.
Yes, so as I mentioned, the exact location of the trenches is going to be determined by the existing subsurface utilities. And that these gas mains are being replaced because mainly because there is Boston Water Sewer Commission utilities that, there's encroachment, so they have to replace these gas mains for that reason. So somewhere adjacent and out of the way of that is where they will be replaced.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
I have nothing on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
So this time it's a new reason. It's not that they are getting old, it's encroachment with Boston Water Sewer Commission. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, so that's the main reason. I don't know the full extent of details, but I believe that National Grid is required because of that encroachment to replace the gas mains. And they are, since they have to be replaced, I believe it's an opportunity to, go to a plastic gas main in order to increase the reduce the likelihood of leaking because that is the preferred material. And again, the increase in diameter, like other projects that I've brought from National Grid, is due to the increased demand in South Boston. This neighborhood in particular has increased demand. So that's why the diameter would be increasing. And that's sort of the secondary, but the Boston Water and Sewer Commission is the primary reason for this replacement.
So if there was no Boston Water Sewer Commission reason, even though there is a demand for more energy, let's say, you wouldn't be doing the replacement?
I'm not sure. That's not in my
Well, every one of these
decision-making.
replacement, it seems like the diameter is increasing. This is new fossil fuel infrastructure. It's not, is National Grid at all trying to do anything as an alternative to bring energy to people's homes?
I am not aware of any alternatives. I'm just on the consulting permitting side. I don't know of National Grid's climate resiliency strategies or if they have any in place. But to my knowledge, excuse me, this is the replacement of just existing mains, and in order to maintain the existing services that are in place in Columbia Road and tied to residencies and businesses and such in the roadway. So I'm not sure if there's any plan in place to have a different method. I think a lot of it is also up to dependent on what the customers are still actively needing.
Well, customers want energy. I'm not sure that they're insisting on fossil fuel energy, but in any case, resilience is about adaptation. I was asking about mitigation, meaning not releasing any more fossil fuels, but I'll bet. You also said the trench locations are not known yet?
So the location shown on the plans of the gas main is mostly an estimate. It will be field verified. DigSafe will have to be utilized and everything. So it's pretty, there's not going to be like a major change in the location. It will be within the right of way, but yeah, so depending on those subsurface utilities, it can move a few feet.
All right, thanks.
All set. Commissioner Condon, I can tell you from firsthand experience, as I was deputy mayor of a very small town in Colorado, and I oversaw the DPW department, and you do not want gas and water main lines anywhere near each other. Bad things happen. It's unbelievable.
Chair Parker.
Yeah. Commissioner Richmond.
Thank you. I don't really have any thing further to add, but I would just say that I very much appreciate the comments from the other commissioners having to do with the idea of resiliency on the part of the utility, which keeps coming with bigger pipes and different reasons. So, I understand that people need to have energy, but the failure of this utility to provide good information about what it's doing to try to change that is very troubling.
Yeah, on that score, I think the city at some point is going to be, I'm not going to predict this, but there'll be a ban on fossil fuels. So at this point, they're still permitting natural gas in the housing construction. So and I have a feeling that's something that's going to be taken care of in the future. And it's both, city policy, state policy, and National Grid. Okay, so with that, I would entertain do we have anybody from the public? I don't see any raised hands.
I don't see any raised hands either, and nothing in the inbox.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the standard erosion control conditions.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
No.
I'm sorry. Did you say no?
I said no. Yeah, that we don't have any plans here, just line drawn on a cartoon. So I just can't vote positive, that's all.
Okay. Let me just keep on going through with the vote then. Okay, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
No.
Commissioner Richmond.
No,
Okay, so it doesn't matter how I vote. So I'm going to amend the motion and ask for a motion to continue the hearing. Get the plans that Commissioner Sullivan is looking for.
oh, that's a good idea. I'll join. Are you making that motion?
You can make it.
Well, that's okay. You're the chair. You can make it. Since you
Um,
know exactly what it is you're gonna ask for.
I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan.
Was there a condition that Commissioner Sullivan was going to add to this motion, or was it just as
No.
is?
Yeah, no, I don't need it. It's being continued. We don't have enough information. I don't have enough information. I don't see any
Okay.
plan. to see a line on a
Okay.
ortho.
Sounds good. Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. Okay, okay,
Um,
Julia.
I'm sorry, I just have a question. We submitted full plans of with drawings with the locations of the gas mains. I'm not sure why you're saying that you don't have any plans to look at. We have plans submitted. In addition to the ortho, the figures that were presented on the screen were not the extent of what was submitted. We submitted stamped plans, drawings issued for construction. So if that's what's holding this up, I would like to clarify, and I could even have, pull those up on the screen and show you. But those were submitted, so I'm not really sure why you're not seeing them.
Yeah, Commissioner Sullivan, I've got 37, not plan sets, but 37 pages of plans, PS&E plans. I think that's what Julia is referring to.
Yeah, and that may be, if you can recall, I just barely made this meeting today because of other commitments and other meetings.
Okay.
I have plans. And that's why I just said no. I figured the rest of you would say yeah. So that's what I said. I haven't seen the plans. We're going forward with the city of Boston against the Boston Gas Company, who consistently damages water mains. They follow no rules. We had 3 water main breaks at Harrison because of the gas company. They're on Blue Hill Avenue, violating everything I've ever seen in my whole career. And so I just do it without looking at these plans in detail. I didn't have them tonight.
Okay, okay, Julia, so that clarifies things. Commissioner Sullivan is really the expert on this. So I think I think I can speak for the rest of the commissioners. We'd feel more comfortable if he's able to review the plans. We do have them. And if Commissioner Sullivan, I'm sure, will let Elena know if the plan sets that are in here are not sufficient for his review and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Jacobs on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the proposed masonry repairs on the Elliott Street Bridge associated maintenance located in Alston. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
I am Susan MacArthur from Jacobs.
Great.
Thank you. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry about it being sideways. So I'm here with Anthony Richardson, project manager at Jacobs, also Corey Beckwith, MassDOT Environmental, and Anthony Christakis, who is the MassDOT project manager. Jacobs has filed this request for determination of applicability on behalf of MassDOT for maintenance work on the LA Bridge located over the Charles River in Boston and Cambridge. Back in 2016, MassDOT came before you with an what's that? I'm sorry, I thought somebody said something. Came before you with an RDA for the same project, and the commission did issue a negative determination. Since that time, due to funding, though, the project was never completed or even started, I guess. So the project is back before you, and it's on the Transportation Improvement Project for MassDOT. The scope has been slightly expanded, and I will get into that in a minute. So the Elliott Bridge is a 7-span concrete encased steel truss bridge built in the 1950s. You can go to the next slide. The land use immediately adjacent to the bridge includes developed open space, open water, wooded areas, and grass. There are no bordering vegetated wetlands just adjacent to the bridge in this area. The bridge carries 4 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes in each direction, westbound and eastbound, with a sidewalk on each side. And over a decade ago, scuppers which were on the bridge were covered over, and so to this day, stormwater flows down like the sides of the bridge, down the roadway, I should say, down to catch basins on the end of each side of the bridge. So you can go to the next slide. So show some more photos. Next slide. Okay, there's the sidewalk. So the main focus of the work will be brickwork that runs along the entire facade of the structure, along the interior of the bridge railings and the arches. The bricks are heavily deteriorated and must be completely replaced with new bricks. The majority of this work will be performed via a barge in the river. The barge will contain spud feet, which will sit on the bottom of the Charles River to provide stability for the workers on the barge to perform the necessary improvements to the bridge. It will access the river via an existing boat ramp, but that would be up to the contractor. So they will not be going down the sides of the grassy slope or anything like that. Next slide, please. These are just examples of a potential barge that might be used to work on the bridge. Next slide. All right, this is hard to see, but we've estimated the work zone on the plan where the barge will be located. This work zone has been calculated to be approximately 38,800 square feet to land underwater. The number is greatly exaggerated in order to allow the contractor to work adjacent to and under the bridge itself. Any impacts to land underwater shall be temporary. It's strictly the feet of the barge just sitting on the bottom of the river. Any work on the landward facing side of the bridges will be done with ladders, which will sit on the grass or on existing pavement. So earlier on, I said that the original scope was expanded. That expanded work includes partial depth concrete repair and widening of the existing sidewalks to repair deterioration that's occurred and just create a uniform appearance. Bridge joint replacement at the east and west abutments. Reconstruction of the median with a concrete barrier. Replacement of navigational lighting on the bridge. Installation of end treatment for the proposed median reconstruction. And the bridge drainage, cleaning and restoration. And as I had said, those scuppers were filled in, and they're just going to uniformly patch those over, and then they're also going to mill and pave the bridge deck itself. And all that additional work that I just mentioned is non-jurisdictional. It's all within existing pavement. There's not going to be any widening or any work outside of the bridge area itself. And the catch basins that I had said that are on each side of the bridge will, they will be, silt sacks will be put into them to capture any like mortar dust or anything that might happen to flow down the sides, you know, to the catch basins. And I think that is it. Again, the contractor has not been awarded yet. A lot of like the staging areas and that type of thing are determined by the contractor. So MassDOT hasn't, you know, hasn't specified that in this filing. They haven't put up erosion controls on here, just mainly because there's not going to be any ground disturbance on, you know, on the embankments or anything like that. So any questions?
Sure, just a couple quick questions. As far as debris falling off the bridge in the barge area, what's the containment there again?
Well, it would fall on, I think there, and maybe Anthony, you could jump in on this. They would put netting up under to capture any bricks that might be, you know, potentially falling.
Yes, so the contractor will allow the contractor to propose a final containment system, but the plan would be that they would use some sort of netting to catch bricks. That being said, the majority of the bricks that will be removed are on the inside face of the railing. The outside face of the bridge is not exhibiting the same level of deterioration. So there's not an expectation to remove a lot of brick from the outside face.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Elena, any questions on this?
A quick question that is related, related to the area. So I was just wondering if if anybody on the team knew about some stormwater swale work that was probably done, let's see, it would have been this past summer. I was just curious about this because we'd gotten an email it would have been in May, that DCR was planning on doing maintenance on an existing swale that's along the Charles River at Elliott Bridge. And they just hadn't given us 48 hours notice. And so we'd requested for that 48 hours notice and for the work to be rescheduled so that we could get that 48 hours notice and be there for, you know, just to oversee things. And we never heard back. So I was wondering if that work was ever done. And if it was, then that would be an issue.
That I don't know. I mean, I know that MassDOT, so the bridge is owned by DCR, but MassDOT is charged with doing any kind of bridge and parkway improvements. So as far as the swales go, I'm not really sure. Anthony, any idea about the swale work at the Elliott Bridge?
I'm not sure exactly who would have worked on the swales. I know roughly the areas you're talking about. There was recently a project, I'm guessing Stella from DCR is no longer on the call since she already presented, but Stella has worked with us on this project sort of hand in hand with MassDOT to try to work through these issues as we have kind of abutting properties. But I don't know who would have worked on the swales, but there is a project to the southwest that I assume that everyone's aware of that DCR worked on. It doesn't sound like that's what you're talking about, though. It sounds like something else. So we can
the email was from Joseph McCran, and it would have been in late May of this year.
Yeah, that name does not sound familiar. We've worked with Stella, who earlier presented project, and Sean Casey, who typically oversees a lot of the permitting for DCR. So that name doesn't remind me of anyone on the projects that we've discussed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to check in on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, those catch basins, deep sump catch basins.
I'm guessing there, Anthony, do you know?
I'm a bridge engineer, so I'm not 100% sure of the exact term that deep sump, but they are part of the network that runs off the bridge into Boston and Cambridge. They're operating and draining into the drainage system.
Hey,
Yeah,
John, I'm sorry, this is Anthony Christakis from Mass DOT. The catch basins are off the bridge structure and belong to DCR. They're not MassDOT.
Right.
Right.
That's what made me think they're not deep sump catch basins. I'm just curious. It's as a minimum, we try to remove phosphorus. Well, we don't do that. This is laying between the two cities. And generally they've done it for us before, done some phosphorus control, MassDOT has. But as a minimum, you got to get the salt and sand that you put down there and capture it and let it settle down and clean them. Now, it may be a DCR problem, but are you touching, you're touching their bridge. Why wouldn't you touch their catch basins?
Actually, it's a DOT bridge, and DCR has permanent easement rights on there for some storage areas they have under the bridge. And our limits of work are really begin and end at the approach slabs to the bridge. That's it. We don't go off the bridge.
So you're not doing any work near these catch basins. You wouldn't be regulating the grates or anything. You just
No, all we're doing is putting the controls on, the silt sacks on them.
Okay.
And that's it. The primary focus, this is a preservation project. It's just to stop the advanced deterioration of the brick on the bridge. That's
I got it. I wasn't sure where they were in relationship to your work.
Yeah.
All right, that's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Conan?
So you're looking for a negative determination here?
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Because we don't want a positive determination.
So is it because you think this is not in jurisdiction, or is it because you feel?
Because we believe that the work is very minimal. I mean, essentially it's the spud feet on the bottom of the river, and which we believe that will not be impactful to the river. I mean, the feet will lift up, the barge will float to the next area, the feet will go down just to stabilize. It'll be moving around, but we don't believe that there'll be any sediment disturbance, I should say, as a result of.
I see. And what do you call them? Spud feet?
Spud feet, yes.
SPUD?
SPUD. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't tell. And that is the extent of involvement with the sediment as far as this project goes?
That's all.
I feel like if it's an NOI type of discussion, my fellow commissioners would be asking a lot of questions about how you're dealing with any debris that might fall and whatnot, just to make sure that the disturbance is minimal and if anything at all. But it seems like it's right in the river, and I'm just having a hard time why it would be a negative determination. But I don't have the expertise here, so I'll pass on.
Yeah, I was just to say, Commissioner Conan, the reason I asked that question, one is because I was concerned about it. Not because I thought that the work was extensive work or had impacts that warrant an NOI. That being said, we can issue a negative determination of applicability with conditions. So, for instance, we could issue an NDA with a condition that the screening, to prevent debris from falling into the river, be included. And apparently that is going to be included in the contract docs.
Okay, so
I just want to make sure you know that you can add conditions to an RDA.
I think that would be a condition I'd like to see. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so and just to speak to that, our contract documents right now call for the contractor to, put a system in place to ensure that no debris falls into the Charles River. it just will not be allowed on part of that contract.
Great.
The actual system gets into means and methods that we don't want to get into, but they do have to submit that for approval, whatever system they devise.
Yep. Understood. Yeah, the public procurement process is a little bit different than the private process, so I understand what you need to do here. Commissioner, are you done, Commissioner Conan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I think my questions have been mostly asked. If the brick has deteriorated, I mean, one might ask the question why it was allowed to deteriorate, but I guess that's not, again, within our jurisdiction. But, the brick is that deteriorated, I would be very concerned that it's going to land in the river. So I second the request that there be a condition in the, if there is a negative determination of applicability.
Okay, thank you. Anyone's hands raised? I don't see any.
I don't see any, and I just wanted to take a minute to jot down the exact language that
Yeah, I'll give it to you when I.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so so to entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with standard erosion controls, conditions, and also a condition that the debris control or the screening or whatever mechanism is used by the contractor when you get your final docs be presented to staff for their review.
Okay.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is, let's see, we're skipping Orient Heights, right? Before we do that, actually, let me just note that there has been notice of intent for DEP file number 0061704 in Boston, file number 2020-007. Okay, Elena, I think Orient Heights COC is out, right?
Correct. Yes, that's out.
And we're now in our regular meeting. Request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061806 from, I'm sorry, fold it over. Roche de La Rochelle for the reconstruction of the container yard landward of berths 11 and 12 at the Conley Container Terminal located at 20 Farragut Road in South Boston. What do you
Yes.
have?
Staff would recommend continuing this because we were not able to schedule a site visit.
Oh, okay. So entertain a motion to continue this.
So moved.
We have a second.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay, also continued were two requests for COCs, requests for certificate of compliances for DEP file number 0061865 and DEP file number 0064740. And now we have administrative outdates. How about updates? And I think we have a special guest here.
We do, yes. So great way to close out the hearing or meeting. So yeah, Catherine McCandless, who many of you know, our climate resilience and one of our climate resilience project managers with the City of Boston's Environment Department, is going to give us a brief presentation on the Mattahunt Woods Urban Wild Restoration Project and identify for the commission some parcels that would be available for the commission to acquire should they feel so inclined. So Kat, you can take it away.
So much. It's really great to see you all. It's been a while since I've been to one of the Conservation Commission hearings, and I've kind of forgotten how late they can go. So I'll do my best to keep this brief so that everyone can have a little bit of time before bed tonight to relax. But so as Elena mentioned, I work with the Environment Department primarily on the Climate Ready Boston team, but I also have the pleasure of occasionally getting to hop in and work with the Conservation Commission on some projects. And so I've been working as the project manager for the Mattahunt Woods Urban Wild Restoration Project that has been underway since last year in 2022, but really has kind of been moving full speed since the beginning of this year. So as Elena mentioned, just going to give a quick overview of the project and hope to initiate a parcel transfer request. Next slide, please. So this project, it has been a collaboration between the City of Boston's Environment Department and the Parks and Recreation Department. So I've been working closely with Elena and Christopher and Paul Sutton and Nick, as well as with a team of landscape architects from Crowley Cottrell, who you may remember because they've been working on the Roslindale Wetlands Urban Wild project as well. Next slide. So I think most of you are probably familiar with this property, but Mattahunt Woods is an urban wild that has been permanently protected since 2008 and consists of about 8¼ acres of forested wetlands in the neighborhood of Mattapan. The urban wild today is incredibly overgrown with invasive species. It's practically impossible to traverse the site in the spring and the summer when everything is in full growth. There's also been a history of dumping of construction debris and automobile parts, even as recently as I think a few weeks ago, there was a kitchen sink. As I mentioned, invasive plants. But there are still some healthy plant communities and 2 wetlands on site. And so for the next slide, please. Our goals for this project have been to look at opportunities to remove hazardous trees and invasive species, as well as increasing native vegetation throughout the property, preserving and enhancing those on-site wetlands that I mentioned, creating a trail system through the property, because currently there is kind of a perpendicular pathway that cuts directly through, but doesn't actually weave its way through the property. We want to improve site access and wayfinding and signage, and that also includes creating and enhancing new entrances in the space so that people have more ways of getting in and out of the property. And as part of that, enhancing the connection of the property to the nearby Mattahunt Elementary School, which is basically across the street from this site, so that the students that go to this elementary school can better use this property for things like nature walks and science classes, et cetera.
Kat, can I just ask you a question on this one?
Mm-hmm.
Can you identify that male with the gray cap and the female with the blue fleece on there?
Are these some of our commissioners?
That looks like Commissioner Herbst and myself.
Oh, well, look at that. We didn't realize that when we selected this image, but good to know. Thanks for some of the cleanups that you've done in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for pointing that out. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this project technically kicked off in 2022, but given the sad departure of Nick Marino and Kate Otheimer from the Conservation Commission, some sad staff turnover, the project kind of got delayed for a little bit, but then really kicked off this year. And now we're very lucky to have Elena and Christopher staffing the commission and working with us on this project. But so our community engagement process for this effort really kicked off in May of this year. We had a community open house that was then followed by some virtual office hours where folks could drop in and ask us questions, especially if they weren't able to attend the open house. We had a well-attended community site walk, as well as we had staff table at Mayor Wu's Mattapan Coffee Hour. And not reflected on here, there's also been a ton of internal coordination with various departments in the city, including BPS, Boston Water and Sewer Commission, the Parks Department more broadly, the Green Infrastructure Office. We have a meeting with the Disabilities Commission and Age Strong tomorrow, actually. So there's been a lot of coordination happening to make sure that all the pieces of this project are tying in with other plans and initiatives. Oh, we Plan Mattapan was a big one that we coordinated with as well. And we also have our second and final community open house next Wednesday from 6 to 8. So if anyone wants to join and get a little bit of a fuller picture of where we are at with the design of this current phase, there is a registration link available on the project website, which is included at the end of this presentation. Next slide. So you can see the boundary of the urban wild, or the approximate boundary of the urban wild, in a black dashed line. And so this map is showing that the green and yellow parcels highlighted are property or parcels that are already owned by the city. The green is owned by the Conservation Commission, and the yellow is currently owned by the Mayor's Office of Housing. And then anything that is not highlighted within the boundary is currently privately owned, but more or less deemed undevelopable, given that this is mostly on paper streets and is on the interior of this wooded area. So the request that we have for you is that we have been in conversation with the Mayor's Office of Housing, and they own, again, a number of parcels that are in and around this urban wild. And they have graciously offered to transfer the ownership of these 6 parcels to the Boston Conservation Commission to be integrated as part of the urban wild, 3 of which are already in the interior of the delineated urban wild, and 3 of which are technically outside of it and would extend the boundary of the urban wild, so that the current entrance that is on Colorado Street, kind of the road that you can see next to the 3 block parcels, we would essentially have Conservation Commission ownership on both sides of that primary entrance into the space. Next slide. And so this is an overview of those parcels on the City of Boston's parcel viewer map, just pointing out the specifics of the parcels and their addresses. And so in total, this would be bringing in 20,000 square feet of property into the Conservation Commission's control to be permanently preserved and integrated into this project in terms of restoration work and maintenance through the Urban Wilds program. So our request is to initiate this transfer if this is something that the Conservation Commission would be interested in supporting. We would look to then, go with the process of noticing the transfer in the Herald or in other forms, coming back to seek a vote by the commission at a future hearing, ideally after our open house, which makes sense since that's next week, so that we can let folks in the community know that we have moved forward with this parcel transfer. Next slide. Last slide. So this is just a timeline for your reference of where we're at with the project. As I mentioned, we had an open house back in May, followed by community engagement and some design revisions. And we're coming back to the community next week to share where we've landed on integrating all of the really awesome feedback that we've heard from people for what they'd like to see included in the project. After that, we will be working on final design, and then we'll be coming to you for permitting. And we would also then come with a full project presentation to show where we've landed and what we're proposing for the site in terms of all the design elements and different features that would be integrated into the space. We're working to then prepare for construction bidding at the end of this year, to then begin construction bidding at the start of next year, so that we could begin construction in the spring. And TBD on when we'll conclude construction. We'll hopefully have a estimated date soon. But that is it. So last slide. Thank you so much. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to stay and answer them, of course. And this is just some links to the project website where you can find the past meeting presentation and materials, etc. And just my contact information, which I know you all have. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kat, and thank you for all the work you do. Very happy about this. I think we're closing in on my personal goal of 10 acres since I get on the Concom. I think we're pretty close now. But I don't have any questions. Look forward to seeing this on the agenda in the near future. Does anybody have any questions for Kat while we have her?
I said near future, we could ask those questions in the near future, or should we ask them now?
I think we can ask them when it comes for a vote.
I get a quick one. What is construction bid? What kind of construction happens in a urban wild?
Yeah, and maybe Nick can speak more to that. Paul will be taking over the project management when it comes to that point, but primarily it involves the removal of invasive species, the planting of native species, and the construction of the trail network.
Oh, okay. It's nature construction.
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, okay.
We've also been working with your department, though, and they are televising the pipes underneath the urban wild to make sure that they're in good condition, so that if any of them need replacement prior to us going in there and doing our trail construction, that would be coordinated in advance.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. Construction is fixing all the things we took down. That's what I thought you'd say.
Right, I had that question also, but I'd generally be curious about what risks are lying hidden in the space, if any. And also, what work will it take to maintain this going forward? But because this is essentially an ask to increase the capacity of the commission staff, right? So some assessment of that would be good if you don't have it now, but sometime later.
Yeah, in terms of risks, none that I'm aware of, but we can certainly get back to you and make sure to include any assessment of that when we come back in the in the next few months. And we've been coordinating with Nick and Paul and Taylor to make sure that the acquisition of these parcels is mindful of any operational requirements that would accompany that. And so the reason that we decided to move forward with these is because 3 of them are already on the interior, so they're already kind of treated as part of the space that's going to be maintained. And then the 3 that are closer to Colorado Street don't have any street frontage, so they wouldn't require anything like snow removal or things like that. So we were looking at some other parcels that the housing office owns and was willing to transfer to us, and decided to hold off on those for right now, just as we assess the operational requirements of this project. So there might be opportunities to acquire some additional parcels, especially as the housing office continues to acquire more land in this area that they don't plan to develop. And yeah, we're being just very mindful of what those maintenance requirements are.
Thank you.
We don't want to overburden Nick and his team.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay. Kat, looking forward to seeing you for a proxy in the future with these properties. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Okay, we've continued the issuance of the order of conditions for notice of intent for DEP file number 0061928 and Boston file number 2023-018. Meeting minutes have not yet been prepared, so all we're left with is a motion to adjourn the acclamation. Any objections?
No.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Elena. Chris, take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.